Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Historic Preservation Board meeting for the City of West Palm Beach on January 28th, 2020. Can we please begin with a roll call?
Ms. Skyer?
Here.
Ms. Aspergren?
Here.
Ms. Kellogg?
Here.
Mr. Pickney?
Here.
Ms. Chambers? Mr. Jaroslavsky? Mr. Rislar? Mr. Reginald Stambaugh?
Here.
Mr. Casatly?
Here.
We now move on to approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay, none from staff. Anyone on the board want to make any changes to the agenda? If not, can we please have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the agenda for January 28th, 2020.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to approval of the minutes from the December 18th, 2019 meeting. Do we have any changes to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes for December 28th, 2019.
Can you amend your motion for the date, December 18th?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that we approve the minutes for December 18th, 2019.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the report of the Historic Preservation Planner.
Good evening, Frederique Mittner. Since we were not able to report numbers last time, I did want to share with you that in the span of November to December, staff had 50 Level 1 applications and 13 zoning reviews. From December to today's date, we completed 78 Level 1 reviews, 1 Level 2, and 29 zoning reviews. And we also had 2 very successful architectural bike tours in honor of the city's 125th anniversary. We led one on the north end and one on the south end and had approximately 30 people on each. Also excited to announce that the City of West Palm Beach has been shortlisted to host the NAPC, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, Forum Conference, and so they'll be visiting us next month to see if we are finalists, and if so, will be announced in July. And those are my updates.
Great. Did you put forth that application?
Yes.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank you.
Moving on to remarks by the chairperson. The matters before us this evening are quasi-judicial in nature, which means we make our decisions based on competent, substantial evidence that comes before us. We ask you to please keep that in mind when you speak. How this works is for each case, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a presentation, followed by a staff presentation. We will then open it up to public comment, and each person is allocated 3 minutes. And after that, if there is public comment, the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal if they would like one. To lead into this, we need to let you know if we've had any conversations about the items on tonight's agenda outside of this meeting. So we will begin with a declaration of ex parte communications. Mr. Casatly.
Theodore Aspergren, no ex parte communication.
Amanda Skyer, I did speak to Ms. Mittner about the projects on tonight's agenda, but I can make my decision based on the evidence presented.
Kristen Kellogg, no ex parte communication.
Dan Pickney, no ex parte communications.
Reginald Stambaugh, no ex parte communications.
Thank you. We now move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. If you are here to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. Is there anyone here to speak on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the swearing in of our speakers. If you plan to speak this evening or think you might, please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Starting with new business, we'll begin with case number 20-01301 Southern Boulevard.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Board members, Colleen Walter with Urban Design Kildare Studios, here on behalf of Flagler Development, the applicant for the 301 Southern Boulevard site. There is a request to repurpose the site for a 7-Eleven. I have with me here this evening representatives of the applicant as well as representatives from our design team. There are 2 items on your agenda this evening related to this piece of property in the building. They are items 6.1 and 6.2. I'm going to go ahead and present these items concurrently since they are related to the same project. The first case, 20-01, is for a Class B special use permit for a convenience store and accessory motor fuel sales, and it includes 5 waivers to the supplementary standards for that use. The second case, case number 20-02, is for a property ad valorem tax exemption for pre-construction alterations and a certificate of appropriateness. The site that is the subject of these 2 cases is located on Southern Boulevard, east of I-95 and east of Dixie Highway. As you know, Southern Boulevard is a major transportation corridor that runs east-west through the south end of the city. It is a major connection between Palm Beach Island, City of West Palm Beach, I-95, and Palm Beach International Airport, as well as going to all points west. The site itself is located at the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard and Olive Avenue. It is within the Central Park Historic District, and that is why this Class B special use permit with waivers is before the Historic Preservation Board. Typically, these type of uses go to the Zoning Board of Appeals unless they are within a historic district. In that case, they then come before you for consideration of not only the changes to the site and the building, but also the use and the waivers. This area is a mix of commercial, retail, office, and residential uses that serve both the community surrounding the site as well as those that utilize Southern Boulevard, Dixie Highway, and Olive Avenue to go through the city in both the east-west and north-south direction. As it relates to the proposed Class B special use for the convenience store with gas sales, 7-Eleven currently exists to the east of this site. They have an existing convenience store located on the north side of Southern Boulevard, approximately 500 feet to the east. Formerly, there was a Sunoco gas station to the west of the site on the corner of Dixie and Southern. However, this gas station was demolished, and recently a Chase Bank has been constructed at this corner. There is an existing Marathon gas station at the south side of this intersection. However, we understand that this site is under contract and will be redeveloped, and this use will be terminated. So essentially, there will be a loss of 2 gas stations along this corridor. The existing 7-Eleven convenience store will relocate to this site once it is constructed. The site itself is 1.3 acres in size, and it's comprised of 3 parcels of land, which will be unified via the plat process as part of the series of applications that are going through the city for this site. The property was initially developed in 1958 for the First Federal Savings and Loan Bank of West Palm Beach. The bank use existed on this site till approximately 2010, when the building was then occupied by the administrative offices for a charter school. That use terminated around 2014, and since then, the building has been vacant. In 2009, this building was added as a contributing structure to the Central Park Historic District. There are a mix of uses that are directly surrounding the site. They include offices, to the east, the existing 7-Eleven convenience store, the corner store on the southeast corner, full-service car wash on the south side of Southern opposite the site, Flanagan's and the Marathon gas station, also along the south side, multi-story office building directly to the west of the site, and the new Chase Bank. There are also residential uses located to the north of the site, in the northwest corner of the site directly adjacent to, and the other residential uses are on the north side of Conniston and the east side of Olive Avenue. The proposed redevelopment of this site and the adaptive reuse of the building for a convenience store with accessory gas sales is an appropriate addition in this corridor, as the existing convenience store use that is currently located just to the east will relocate to this site, and with the anticipated termination of the other gas station use, that will also be co-located on this property with the convenience store. The existing conditions on the site are that the building is located with great frontage on Southern and Olive. The majority of the balance of the site is utilized for parking. As you can see, there are 4 access points on Southern Boulevard, 1 on Olive, and 3 on Conniston. And the way that the parking lot is laid out, the site actually depends on the surrounding roadways for on-site circulation within its parking lot. Existing vegetation on site is minimal, and 2 of the original signs from when the bank was initially constructed remain and will be incorporated into the plan of development. And these are photos of the building and the site from Southern Boulevard. The proposed plan of development retains the eastern portion of the building, that portion of the building where the building area is at grade. It proposes the new fuel pumps and the canopy to the west of the building. There is a pedestrian amenity that is proposed to the east of the building on the intersection that will provide for outdoor seating and a gathering space. This design also consolidates the access points. As you'll see, there is only 1 access point on Olive and 1 access point on Southern. No vehicular access points are proposed to Conniston Road, so no vehicular access onto that street. This design vastly reduces the amount of impervious area that currently exists on the site, which allows for additional green space to be provided. The design incorporates an approximate 25-foot wide buffer along Conniston that will provide both a physical separation and a visible barrier from the residence to the site and the parking area that's on the north side of the building. There are also buffers per code proposed around the remaining portion of the property. And there are additional amenities provided, such as 3 sets of bike racks throughout the site, recognizing that Olive Avenue and Southern Boulevard are primary bike corridors. There are 5 waivers that are associated with the Class B special use request. These include number 1, which is for a setback between vehicular use areas and residential zoned parcels, and this applies to the lots that are directly adjacent to the site on the south side of Conniston. The second waiver is for separations between residential districts and other convenience stores that are unique to the specific use. The third is a waiver for the configuration of the pump islands. It is not a waiver to increase the number of pump islands. However, the code is very specific in the configuration of the pump islands. So this is a waiver for an alternate configuration. The fourth waiver is to allow for a fence to be used where the site is directly adjacent to the 2 residential lots and for elimination of a required wall along Conniston Road. And the fifth is a request for expanded hours of operation for the site. Where these waivers apply to the site is the first, which is the setback between the vehicular use area and the residentially zoned parcels, is in the northwest corner of the site where it is adjacent to single-family lots. The existing edge of pavement is 5 feet from the lots, and the proposal is to retain that existing edge of pavement line so that adequate circulation is provided around the gas pump area. There'll be additional landscaping proposed in that buffer, as well as replacing the existing fence, wood fence, with a vinyl fence in that location. The second waiver is for separations between this use and residential properties. And these include the 2 lots that I just mentioned that are directly adjacent, as well as the residentially zoned properties on the north side of Conniston, the east side of Olive, adjacent to the northern portion of this site, and also include a waiver from the separation distance between this convenience store and the corner store, which is classified as a convenience store, even though it really does cater to a different clientele and different type of products than the convenience store here will. The third waiver, as I mentioned, is for the configuration of the pump islands. Code is specific that there be 2 islands with 3 pumps each. Due to the narrowness of this site, we are proposing 3 islands with 2 pumps each. So still 6 pumps at the end of the day. This is just more of a linear configuration in an east-west direction than in a north-south direction, again, because of the narrowness of the western portion of the site. The fourth waiver applies along the northern boundary. The code requires a minimum 4-foot, maximum 5-foot wall between residential zoning districts and commercial zoning districts. What would be required along the northern portions of the site would be a wall. We are asking for a waiver. The design team and city staff agreed that doing a soft vegetative buffer along Conniston Road was a better option than putting a wall there and essentially dividing off the site and creating concerns with security, septet, and graffiti. As it relates to the buffers adjacent to the existing lots, in those instances, there is an existing wood fence. There also are overhead utilities that run through the middle of the site that will remain aerial. So using a vinyl opaque fence in that location is more practical and applicable, and the city staff has on other projects found that that is consistent with the idea of creating an opaque barrier between the residential and commercial uses. The fifth waiver is for the expanded hours of operation. The request is to allow the convenience store and gas fueling to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The existing 7-Eleven to the east currently operates 24/7. The Marathon gas station to the west currently operates 24/7. So this would be consistent also in recognition of Southern Boulevard being a major transportation corridor. The type of traffic that is on Southern Boulevard also is a 24/7 type use. People going to work early in the morning, going over to Palm Beach Island, going to Palm Beach International Airport. So based on those factors, we are requesting the expanded hours of operation. Staff has reviewed the application materials for the Class B special use and the waivers and has found that they comply with all of the standards that are in the code. Staff is recommending approval of these requests, and staff is not recommending any conditions of approval for these applications. And with that, I would like to introduce Keith Spina from Spina, O'Rourke and Partners to discuss in detail the proposed alterations to the building that are going to accommodate this adaptive reuse for the convenience store and gas sales facility.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Spina with Spina O'Rourke and Partners, and we are the architect for the project. And, I've had the opportunity, I think it's been probably closer to 15 years, to work with different owners of this property to try to figure out what to do with it. We had Lee Munder bought this building, like I say, I think it was probably 15 years ago, and wanted to do a great rehab on the building and put his car collection in it. And for a variety of different reasons, wasn't able to do that. We ended up getting the old Sykes Tile building and doing a great car collection building for him right down the street near Belvedere and Dixie. And then it went to, I think during Lee's ownership, Mark Rodberg, who's another local resident of West Palm Beach in the neighborhood, he operated the charter school out of that. That didn't survive, and then there was a couple other people in between. And the interesting part is what could we do with this building to allow the economics to rehab this incredible historic building, because we all think that it is an incredible building. And nobody ever seemed to be able to make it work. I was born and raised in West Palm Beach. My mom lived on Hillcrest, my dad lived on Miramar, kind of equal distance, either direction of the site. I currently, and have been for probably, a little over 20 years, lived at 245 Murray Road, which is a couple blocks south of the site. So I know the project well. I know also the 7-Eleven well. I jokingly said at the CENA meeting the other night that I think I stole my first candy bar at the 7-Eleven on Southern Boulevard. And so I've been around here a lot. I'm passionate about historic preservation. I think I've worked with some of you on projects. Probably 20 years ago, I sat on this board. And so it was interesting when we got involved in the current project, and they said, well, we're thinking of moving 7-Eleven. And I was like, my first reaction was, okay, this is interesting conversation. And I know the 7-Eleven on Southern Well. The 7-Eleven on Southern Well is kind of pretty problematic, but we all seem to live with it, which is you park out in the middle of Southern Boulevard to stop until you get a chance to find a parking space, or you pull up on the sidewalk and you do all these things. But it's pretty inconvenient for a convenience store, but it's been there forever. And, so I thought, well, this is an interesting way. The economics could support incredible historic preservation of this building. And I get gas at the Marathon once a week at least, up on the corner of Dixie and Southern. That's going away, although it's not very far to cross the railroad tracks to get gas in the future. All of a sudden, it's just an interesting fact, and I hope that I don't have to do that for the rest of my life. I hope I get to go to a gas station on the east side of the tracks where we're proposing this project. But most importantly, our firm started looking at this project, and we very quickly with the applicant said, well, you need to explain to 7-Eleven what we're going to have to do. And they said, well, why don't you explain it to them? And so we got involved with 7-Eleven. We started talking about the project and said, this building has to look like this when we're done. And they said, no problem. And we said, well, we also think this is a really active corner, and there should be something significant that contributes to the neighborhood and is a great place for neighbors. I said, I might bring my car up to what was Rubber Ducky, now the Eco Mint. I may wash my car. I may want to walk across the street. I may meet my friend there. I may have a coffee and a donut, but I want to sit outside on the corner and watch, who knows what drives by. Maybe it's the President of the United States, or maybe it's one of my friends on their bicycle. And they said, well, we don't usually do that, but if you think that's the right thing for the neighborhood, all right, we'll consider that. And then we said, well, we also got to be careful with behind us. We've got, residential type community behind us, next to us. And we don't think staring at a parking lot is a really good use. They said, well, what do you do? I said, well, couldn't we do this incredible landscape buffer that almost really turns itself around and creates a public space for people that live in the neighborhood? They can walk their dog, they can sit on a bench, they can stretch, they can do. They said, yeah, it's okay. We'll go along with that. And then we said, by the way, we met with Frederique and her team at the city, and they want us to save the windows, the light fixture. They're like, yeah, that's okay. And by the way, you cannot do what we do in 7-Elevens and stick a bunch of fixtures against all the windows. They said, yeah, that's okay. They said, what do we do with a rotunda? And we said, well, I think it should look exactly like it does today. The glass is new. The windows got this beautiful metal material. We got this really cool, funky light fixture. And they were like, yeah, okay, that's okay. And so when we got done, I talked to the applicant and they said, well, what'd you think? I was like, well, I don't know. That was really weird. They agreed to everything. And I said, if that's what happens, this is like an amazing opportunity for this building. And it's an amazing opportunity for my neighborhood and amazing opportunity for the city, I think. So let me just walk through what it is that we're proposing to do. And I think it's a great building. It's a great part of our community. And I think what we're proposing to show you tonight is, I think, a great adaptive reuse of a really significant historic building in our neighborhood. These are some pictures that we found. Actually, Frederique and her team shared some of these with us. And the architect was George Votow, and designed it in 1958. My dad was an architect in town at that time. I wasn't quite born yet, pretty close. But I don't know who George was, but it's a super cool building. There were a couple other things, like there was Loy Anderson, who was a pretty well-known banker for years and years in this community, and he was the president of the, or board, head of the board, and opened this bank back in 1959 when it opened. It was interesting, the interest rates are kind of about what they are right now, 60 years ago. And some of this was just interesting. It had, pretty little rendering that's hard to tell, but it was talking about the grand opening, had a bunch of the different board members, and it's good historical information that doesn't talk a lot about the building, but it was a good story, and I thought, we included it. And then you take the existing building as it sits today. I think you all are all real aware of it. This is the corner of Olive and Southern, the rotunda, as it sits today. One of the things when we started to look at the actual design of the rotunda, it's a little strange in that it's kind of a unique spacing with the mullions. That's kind of a segmented circle. And then when it gets to the door, though, the segment's the width of a door, not the width of all the windows. And I thought maybe somebody had taken the mullions out or done something, and that's how it was designed, and that's how it is today. So we, just some pictures. The northern side, which is this picture right here, and then the west side, there's not much to them. The north has a couple windows that are in kind of utilitarian type spaces as the building was originally developed, but it's pretty much a blank wall with a bunch of utilities. And then the west wall, which is of the two-story portion, which had a drive-through under it originally, is just a blank wall, and then it's a big parking lot. Some other views, again, I don't spend the whole day on it, but just some views. We wanted to, as we looked at this building, wanted to understand the context of the building, the surrounding buildings, and some of the other stuff. It's Eco Mint now, not Rubber Ducky. Donnell Kenny has his little office for his property management. And we have Corner Store, which has been there forever. Another great, not technically as we talk about it, but I call it a landmark building because it's been there since I can remember, and it's still a great place to go and do things. And then it shows the building on the north side of Southern Boulevard. Colleen has gone through in great detail the site plan. The things that I thought were really significant was the buffer. Every project we ever planned of any other sort of retail, we looked at, could you get Starbucks? Could you get a great local coffee store? Could you get a donut store? Could you get all these other things? And the number one criteria for most of those retail type uses is parking. And everybody said, well, we love the site because it's filled with parking. And this is one of the few site plans that we saw develop where it took 25-foot buffer plus on the north side of the property and devoted it to green space. And I think it's pretty significant for the property, but if you happen to live on Conniston or just north of that, I think it's really significant because it takes the back of a commercial parking lot and turns it into a great, public space in my residential neighborhood. So, and then let's, just dive into the building. So we then, had to figure out an adaptive reuse. What do you need to do to the existing building to make it, be supported in an economic way, but also continue to save its historic significance. And unfortunately, you have to, in this case, we had to tear a portion of the building down. We worked with staff, we knew right at the start of this, how are we going to approach this? The thing that I've talked a lot about this story of this building is because without doing a couple things, one of them being demolish the second story portion of the building, the economics and the adaptive reuse go back out the window. And you say, well, how do you know that? Well, I've been working on this project for 15 years, and nobody else was able to figure out how to do something. And so I thought, it's a really creative solution, but we are proposing, this is the existing building and the drive-through under, and then this is showing the portion of the building that we're going to tear down. Again, we have on the left side, we have the ground floor plan. On the right side is a ground floor plan, and everything from the red line over that's shaded is the area to be demolished. Then we have above it is a second floor existing plan, and then the second floor with the area shaded that's going to be demolished. There is a really clean break in the building where, again, city staff was really adamant. You do know exactly where we're going to demolish the building if, we can get that agreed upon. And we said, yes, of course, there's a line, and that red line was it. We then, started laying out, and again, Colleen went through it in great detail, but to get the gas canopies to fit, that's the only way to fit them. And it was one of the parts of the property that, prevented some adaptive reuse to the building. I'll get into the floor plan a little bit because I think, here it is. So we worked closely with 7-Eleven. This is several iterations, but one of the things 7-Eleven did, and it was difficult. They said, well, you're the architect, you draw it. And we gave it back to their corporate planners, and we worked back and forth. But what we did is the rotunda was a really significant part, prime corner, main and main, and we wanted that. So all that we have there is a place that you can go sit, and you can have a cup of coffee or a donut or whatever you get and just enjoy it. And you drive by the building, it's going to be identical to what it looks like today, except it'll be activated and there'll be life, and there'll be a better treatment on the outside of the building than some asphalt and some withering landscaping. But what they did is that we said there's a really significant part of the architecture that wraps around. And so working closely with the staff, we said, well, we want to start at the rotunda, and we want to work our way west, and we want to work our way north as far as we can to get everything off the glass. And we did an amazing job on the south elevation. We got all the way down to this point, and I'll show you that in the elevations. But all of this is clear from anything inside, so as you drive by the building, you don't see the backs of a bunch of retail display. And then we did the same thing for a significant part of the east elevation until we get to one point. And then we've worked with staff to come up with some ideas of how we think we can treat the glass behind when there's something behind it. And so then we get into the elevations, and we have the first elevation on the top is the existing south elevation. The elevation in the middle is the south elevation with this area shown as being demolished. And then the elevation below is the building where the portion's been demolished, and then the gas canopy that's a little bit further to the west. I'll talk more about the specifics on the elevation. A couple of things that's really unique, and I'll show it in the pictures, but this facade of the building, if you get up and look at it, I'll show you in a picture, has a diamond plate in the frames where the glass, where what you think would be glass, except for the portion right down here. It has a little bit more mullions, then it has no mullions, but it's glass in the portion, but all this is diamond plate. And we do have a couple things in the building behind this, and working with staff, we thought we'd extend the diamond plate through the bottom couple of windows, be really consistent with the way the building is today, and we'll also hide what's behind the glass. So, and then we go to the west elevation. We're existing building today, the portion we're tearing down, which is the second floor portion, and then we are going to take the architectural vocabulary for the building, and we're going to extend it around to the west side of the building. This would be the elevation after we did some demolition, after we've removed the second floor piece, and then we go and cut some openings in an existing wall. So that's why there's a fourth elevation. The east elevation and the south elevation are essentially unchanged, but I wanted to kind of dive into so this is the south elevation of the building I was talking about. So you have that interesting grid, and then all that's diamond plate. And then we have a little bit of glass, a little bit of the grid. And so what we're proposing to do is continue the grid so it's consistent, and then continue the diamond plate down, because behind that are a couple of the fixtures and then the bathrooms in the 7-Eleven floor plan. Another really interesting part was, how do we design a gas canopy that reflects the architecture of the existing historic building? And so what we did is, working with staff, we said there's a couple things that are pretty significant. The columns, which were under the building, and then some of the treatment of the building, whether it be the cornice work or whether it be the grid work. And so we took some of those architectural elements and we applied those to the gas canopy. But I want to emphasize, this corner of the building will look exactly like this when we're done, with the improvement of getting rid of the asphalt driveway and then improving the hardscape and landscape on the corner. And then so this starts to show the gas canopy. We took that same grid pattern. We took the cornice detail from the top of the existing building, and then we took the columns that we all thought were the appropriate columns, to design a gas canopy. And, it was interesting. We asked 7-Eleven, well, tell us where your coolest 7-Eleven gas canopy is. And they actually showed some really great ideas. They had, up in Celebration or Disney, they have some really deco-style canopies. So they had gone through this before and really embraced the idea. And I think working with the city staff, we came up with what we think is a design that's complementary to the architecture, but still in keeping. And then this view, by the way, shows the canopy without trees because we wanted you to be able to see the architecture. And then that shows probably, several years into the life of the trees, but the landscaping that will be in front of that will somewhat screen the gas canopy from Southern Boulevard. And then the last view, which is one of my favorites, is the corner of the building and really the whole entire south facade, and then wrapping our way around significantly to the north will look exactly like it does today. We're going to shift the clock, and we're going to move it around to the front corner, super cool clock, and we're going to save that. And then there's another monument sign a little further to the west that we're going to move as well. And then there's a couple other little things. There's this really funky little planter that happens on the Olive Avenue side in the ground that we're going to rehab and move. And but actually, there's the clock, and then that's the other sign. So, but we save all those, and again, I think it's a pretty interesting and creative opportunity to restore a really significant historic building, not only in our city but in my neighborhood as well. Back to Colleen.
Thank you, Keith. You're very passionate. To wrap up, in regards to the certificate of appropriateness, the ad valorem tax exemption, the renovations, alterations, staff has also reviewed that for compliance with the city standards as part of item 6.2. They are also recommending approval of those requests, subject to 3 conditions of approval that is included in your staff report. And the applicant is in agreement with all 3 of those conditions of approval. We would ask your approval of the 2 requests that are before you this evening. We're very happy to answer any questions that you have. Again, we have the applicant here, representative from 7-Eleven and from the design team, if you have any questions. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant?
Where to begin? The westernmost portion of the building, that doesn't have a second floor, does it?
It does.
It does. And what is the use that's going to be put in that portion of the building? What I'm getting at is that it's an awfully large building, a lot of space, and I was concerned that there might be, I don't know, if there was a second floor, like there'd be ancillary uses, like office space that the business would rent out, which would require additional parking space and things like that.
So right now, this portion of the second floor, which we're demolishing, has a second floor, obviously.
Right.
That gets demolished. And there's a tiny portion of second floor space. Actually, there's no more second floor space up in this portion of the building. A little sliver of it right here. But there's going to be no use in it.
Okay.
We're going to leave, it's part of the architecture, and it's part of the building, but it's going to remain as it is.
And the 7-Eleven store itself is going to occupy the entire remainder of the space, the rotunda, everything. It's going to be really kind of like spread out, like a 7-Eleven superstore or something. I mean, comparison to the one that's there.
Yeah, I think we'd call the existing one a 7-Eleven micro store.
Okay. And as you know, living in that neighborhood there, you're aware that very often you would have tractor trailers or other vehicles parking right in the turn lane there, blocking traffic, blocking sight distance and so forth. So how are you going to accommodate deliveries and so forth and prevent that sort of thing from happening on site?
So we've worked with our civil engineer, traffic engineers to work out, but there is a complete movement of a semi trailer that runs through the site that allows it to get off the site, because that's not, that's not okay. What happens today is different, but
Right.
it's not okay moving forward.
Okay. And I guess my last comment, I commend you on the idea of the vegetation and the sitting areas for the neighborhood, but of course, again, being a resident, we have to be concerned with the homeless issue and so forth. And, I live down there too, and, a 7-Eleven is kind of like in and out. People don't really kind of linger. And very often when I'd be walking there, I'd be the only person on the street. So,
And it was
just a
interesting
comment.
talking with 7-Eleven because, I describe this as this kind of, urban park, although it's not really urban, it's in my suburban neighborhood, but a park, and they said, well, we don't do urban parks at our urban stores because we want to make sure that there's not attracting some element. And then so when we talked about it, they were passionate, the owners of the building are passionate, and the city, of course, isn't. We're not going to let that happen. And the tenant and the owner of the property is going to make sure they all live in the neighborhood too. And so we understand that's a problem. We don't think that the rehabilitation and adaptive reuse of this building that's not fixing or making the problem worse. We need to manage that problem in our neighborhood.
Keith, if I can add
Yes.
to that, thank you. That's one of the items that we are considering with the waiver request for the 24-hour operation, is what that does is it puts an actual person on site 24 hours a day. So that person is available to monitor the site. 7-Eleven will be making improvements for site lighting, for security cameras, and with having a person on site pretty much all day, every day, they will be able to react or take action as needed to address any issues that might arise. And we see that as really a big benefit for the community and this intersection.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I have a couple questions. First of all, I think this is a very creative reuse of this building, and I think I've heard rumors that a lot of the gas stations have to upgrade their tanks, and it's a very costly endeavor, so a lot of them will be closing in the near area. So with that in mind, it's a genius solution, and I would imagine that this use will exist on this property for quite some time, taking that into consideration. I also appreciate the level of detail that has gone into this project. My first question is relating to one of the waivers that's been requested. Have you spoken with these property owners abutting the property? I'm assuming they're rentals or?
Correct. They are rentals. One of the properties is owned by the applicants.
Okay.
And they have it as rental. The other one is under, I believe, still under separate ownership? Do you own both of the adjacent properties or just one?
We own the Chase, we own the office building, and then we own the houses on Conniston as well.
Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned regarding the vinyl fence substitution for the, I guess it's a concrete block wall,
Correct.
that the intent of the code is to provide an opaque barrier. I wonder if the intent is also to provide a sound barrier, because that's quite a change to go from concrete block to vinyl. Can you speak to that?
Sure, yes. Let me get back to this plan. Yes, the existing buffer in this location today is 5 feet wide with a wood fence. And there are overhead power lines that run through the middle of the block, which is very typical. The project engineer has been working with FPL to see if those lines could be put underground. However, FPL has said no. They must remain aerial. So working around that, we have a constraint up in this area to try to get a buffer in there that is going to be adequate and is going to meet the city requirement. I know that the buffer is intended, I believe, primarily to be visual, that when you're sitting in your back door looking out your back window, that you're not looking into a commercial use. So that is why city staff, on many occasions, the Manatee Lagoon parking area that was recently added to the west of Manatee Lagoon had a fence in lieu of a wall. There's been situations like that where city staff has supported the fence in lieu of a wall because it creates the same visual barrier as long as the fence that is proposed is opaque. From a sound standpoint, I don't believe that the vinyl fence will be as sound deafening as a concrete wall, either CBS or panel wall would be. However, we are also proposing existing landscape that's going to remain in there in the form of sable palms and additional landscaping, as well as a hedge, which is going to be a clusia hedge, very similar to what exists along the west side of the site. And those plant materials will provide some sound abatement.
So is there an inability because of the overhead lines to place a concrete block wall, or was it a cost-related decision?
It's the inability of the lines. With the 5-foot width, a concrete block wall would really not be feasible because you need to do a large footer for the concrete block wall. What would be used and what is typically used in these type of buffers is a concrete panel wall where the panels, the posts have the footers, and then the panels are slid into place. But because of the aerial lines, you would not be able to raise the panels and slide them into place. So by providing the fence, it solves that logistical issue of how would you be able to construct that wall.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And then my second question's for Mr. Spina. So considering that these plans call for the demolition of a significant portion of the building, why do you believe that this project is worthy of a tax exemption?
That's a tough question coming from you. I don't know if I want to try to debate Secretary of Interior standards against the chairperson of, it's mostly you. What I try to do is, I think you're familiar with some of the projects we've been involved in, and we're passionate about historic preservation. Our old building, Hopkins Green building, but through Palm Beach and West Palm Beach, we've done a lot of really significant stuff. I don't get, what I do in a case like this is I always go to the expert. And in the case of the city of West Palm Beach, it's Frederic Mittner. And when we worked with Frederic, it was not walk in, oh, wow, we're really excited. That was a challenge. But I think that, I'm guessing, and she's going to share with you her own thoughts, I think, pretty quickly. But I think all of us recognize the challenge with this building. And I think that the tax abatement, and again, you might correct me, but I think it was designed to be an incentive to encourage historic preservation. And that's what we're doing here, And so now when we get into the nitty gritties of the detail, I'm not even going to go there because I think I'm going to screw it up and you're going to call me out and I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing. I'd rather admit I don't know what I'm doing, although we are passionate and I do think I'm an expert at this, but not quite that good. But so I think that, the reason I told this long story about the 15 years of working on this project is it's a reality. And that building, I drive by that building, I ride my bike by it all the time, I walk past it, and I drive by it in my car. Like, that's how I go every day when I go home from work. And it's an abomination. It's an abandoned, beat up, dilapidated building that I think one day, and then, then we'd say, well, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to put code enforcement on you. It's not going to be demolition because of neglect, but it's already getting there. And so I think the tax abatement that, again, provides an economic incentive to a developer and that then gets extended to a tenant to go and do something really fabulous, I think that's why. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my story.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
I've got a couple of questions. Mr. Spina, the first thing is, I think you've done an incredible job with the work as presented, and I share some of the same feelings about the 7-Eleven and the Big First. The 7-Eleven it's been there forever, and I remember going in there as a child. And today I live at 3800 North or Washington Road, 3800 Washington Road, and I go to that 7-Eleven. I walk there to get the board and milk. So it's been there forever. It's great for the community. The traffic patterns are extremely problematic. It's a disaster. It's an absolute train wreck there. With the loss of the gas stations at the corner store and now to the west where the old Shell station is, there's definitely a need. And it's great to see that 7-Eleven's rising the occasion to look to move from its present location, which I can go on and on about that. But 7-Eleven's been great for the community, and as long as I've lived here, my whole life, that 7-Eleven has served me well. So having said that, the Big First is where I had my first savings account there in that lobby, and to preserve the building, or the lion's share of the building, the most noted area, is just wonderful. I would never think that a 7-Eleven would go there, though. So, I mean, that's a real amazing job to have that there, and to have a sitting area in the rotunda. There was never a high intense use of customers coming in there growing up and going into the bank. It was always nice to have coffee served there in the rotunda. That's where you would have your coffee. So the actual use of the rotunda would remain as the bank served its customers. Now 7-Eleven, you'll probably have a lot more coffee served there. The ingress and egress look great. The only concern that I have, and naturally Conniston Road is a residentially platted lots, and the taking of the creeping issue of the commercial into residential, what raises the eyebrow are the dumpsters close to the western property line of the residential area. I don't know how you could address that better in locating them on the east side, because you have the ingress egress. But when I had a case with Krispy Kreme on Boynton Beach Boulevard back in 2001, 2002, and they came in next to residential lots, and they actually were looking to rezone the residential lots they had acquired, and it was a very difficult thing. And the great concerns of the 18-wheelers coming in, I represented the residents, the neighboring residents, and it really was a great concern. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, 18-wheelers coming through, and then the traffic of the dumpsters being close. Perhaps you can comment further more on what the thought process was to put the dumpsters there close to the residential house.
Yes, that was one of the more challenging site design aspects of this project. It also goes back to the aerial overhead lines. The city public works, we have been working with them closely, and the way they access the dumpsters is they have a front-loading truck that picks up the dumpster itself and then empties it into the back of the truck. So having to work around the aerial lines and make sure that there is enough clearance that the truck can get in, back up a little bit, get the dumpster. So that necessitated putting it in the northern section but away from the aerial lines. We did look at the opportunity of locating it over here, kind of centrally located to the site. However, as you're coming south on Olive Avenue, the view that you would have of the landscape buffer and all, we just didn't want those travelers seeing the back of a dumpster.
Right.
What we can do is, I'm sure we can shift it. When again, we'll have to take a look at turning radiuses, which is one of the items that we've been working with the Public Works Department. But there may be a way that we can shift it and utilize some of this green space to increase that separation. And then because the city requires that their dumpster enclosures do be constructed of concrete for sound abatement as well as for just longevity That will also help a little bit with the sound in that location. We also can add additional landscaping around that dumpster to help further bury it and incorporate it into this green area here along Conniston.
Okay.
So yes, we understand
I
that, and we've
understand
been,
now.
yes,
Thank you.
yes, definitely. We can take a look at that as we finalize the site design. The application, we have an application in for informal site plan review with the city, and so we are working with all of the different agencies on that. So we can take that back to Public Works and see what we can work out for access.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. And we'll move on to the staff presentation.
Fred Mittner, presenting cases 20-01 and 20-02. Since the applicant was so thorough, I will be very brief, but as you've heard, it is a Class B special use request with waivers, as well as the ad valorem pre-construction application for the historic preservation component for the site at 301 Southern Boulevard, and it does encompass the northwest property there with the one structure and a lot of parking, and that was previously approved as a Class B for having actually that commercial intrusion into those traditionally residential lots. So again, we're summarizing the two requests and of course the building. Staff shares the concerns of losing this western portion. However, a lot of things came into play, including some design review in terms of utilizing this and having the canopy next to it. But because of this very low clearance and because of the space needed for the canopy, there wasn't even a way to incorporate a portion of it. So even though it's not ideal to lose any portion of a contributing structure, and it does indeed contribute to the Central Park Historic District, we felt it was such an excellent adaptive reuse in every other aspect that because of the design implementation of the canopy, paying homage to those elements, we, in this particular place, in this particular situation, felt it was appropriate. So also, again, more images. The chandelier that's very visible through the clear glass. The clear glass is remaining, and the chandelier will also remain. As you know, we typically don't have purview over the interior, but again, that was a concession and mitigation measure for the request that's being presented to you this evening. And here is that demarcation line. Again, it was that very low clearance drive-through, and it would be that portion to the west. Some fabulous details that luckily the architect has also commented on, reincorporating both the clock as well as this other monument sign, hoping to save some of these other details, the curvature here on these columns. Any new materials on site would be the galvanized metal to again reflect the 1958 architecture. And then to address the residential component, this is the street view from Conniston. As you heard, the applicant does own the residential portion, but this is what you really see. This is a typical day. There's a lot of cars and trucks parked there, and it's an overgrown lot and a parking lot. So there really has not been a residential use since 1958 for this portion of the lot. You saw the site plan. Again, the dumpsters, I was going to state, as Ms. Walter did, that it is surrounded by the CBS block, and we really liked this landscape component here. The renderings that have already been presented to you, and again, the reiteration of the component that's being proposed for demolition, as well as the floor plan, letting the glass show through. The elevations that you've seen, and our recommendation to the board is that we recommend approval for the Class B special use, including the 5 waivers that were listed on page 5 of the staff report. I won't reiterate them because, again, the applicant has. The general use standards, the waiver standards, and again, we do believe the 2 applications are appropriate, as well as meeting the Secretary Interior standards because of the mitigating factors of the 2 clocks, the chandelier, extra design consideration, and an adaptive reuse to make this a viable building. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any members of the public here to speak on this case? Yes, sir. Oh, if you could please come up to the microphone. Have you been sworn in? Yes. Okay, and did you fill out a card? Yes. Okay, if you could please give that to the board secretary. Okay. Thank you. And then if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Robert, last name Lamellis. I own a corner store at 250 Southern Boulevard, and I also own the house next door to the corner store. I just, not as prepared, obviously, as these fine young ladies and gentlemen over here, but I've been in the same location since 1976, okay? 3 things that don't sit in my book is historic, demolition, and 5 waivers. Okay, I understand everything's in progress, but historic and demolition, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. But I understand everything is progressive, and I understand that. Since I've been in the area since '76, I've seen a lot of changes over there. And I do agree that the 7-Eleven, and it's been my competition, supposedly, for years, but I've still maintained there with the competition that was still over there. There was a Chevron across the street. There was another gas station where the Rubber Ducky is. Everything is fine and dandy, but why I got rid of my gas at the store was it's costly to put tanks in the ground, but there's also environmental reasons too, because anything leaks that has gas, and it may not be the stage 2 tanks in the ground, it's all the connections, it's the people putting the connections in, and that's a big problem over there because there's been a lot of cleanup in that corner, especially my property is clean. It's 99.9% cleaned. I'm just waiting on that. The Rubber Ducky had to get cleaned. Now we're gonna put another gas station on the corner. When there's other gas stations that are around, I mean, I don't understand what's the difference of going to a gas station east or west of the bridge? Is that, I kind of like, hey, I'm gonna know, but I can see the congestion of the traffic that was put in there by Rubber Ducky right now. Okay, now we're gonna put more congestion in that same corner, which Olive has gone down to 1 lane, which I've seen it. Dixie is being promoted to go down to 1 lane. Pretty soon there's gonna be where the tanker's gonna go, where the people gonna go. We're restricting, we're making it a funnel, if you actually think of all the traffic that's involved in there. Now, me being in the gas station industry, also since '76 with my father, if you think there's not a problem with a place that's open 24/7 that offers gas, why don't you go in the middle of the night and take your wife or your mother or whoever or your little son and try to get a gallon of milk in a Wawa or one of them places or military that has open 24/7. What it is, different people hang out in the middle of the night in certain places like that. If you see the community where we live in, everything is upgrading. Everything is getting better. There's more residential. Everybody's doing massive upgrades. And then now they want to propose that they don't want to collect any taxes on it. I understand the South End pays a lot of taxes where the people live over there, and that's why everybody lives in that area, because it's a beautiful area. But if you look at it, we have a church down the road, okay? There's another church down at St. Juliana's, is down the road also. The Rubber Ducky, which is the environment right now, that's they did a great thing over there. I mean, if you look at the whole area, we want to make it better. I don't think by adding another convenience store in the area, me being in the business for 40 years with my family, I don't think that's the right step. I know that you're saying, oh, because he's attacking this because he owns a convenience store. Well, I have a little different than a convenience store. I've gotten rid of the gas. I've gotten rid of my lotto. I've gotten rid of all the stuff that gave me a headache, which attracts, per se, let's not say unwanted, but attracts a different type of clientele. Okay, I understand that, and I've become more of a bait shop because, I mean, fishing, it's outdoor and everything is wonderful. But putting another super 7-Eleven or super anything or a Wawa or anything with more congestion, more people, more traffic, I really don't think the residents in that area would really want that to happen, because if you think there's a problem now with the 7-Eleven down the road, and that's just because of parking, There's been parking restrictions everywhere, and I understand the place is a beautiful place, historic and demolition. Doesn't, my book does not see eye to eye. But if you look at everything that's going around in the city, to me, that would just be a mistake in my book. Now, I know they spend a lot of money. I don't have all the tools and the features and the little things that I could put up. But if you have any questions that you want to ask me, for me being in that area for 40 years and having the house next door, I'll be more than glad to answer any of the questions that you have. Because,
Thank you.
I mean, and that's easy. You could ask me about the gas. You could ask me about a lot of things. I mean, but there's a lot of waivers to be looked at. I mean, I don't know, I could keep on going on different things. It probably means more to me because I've been in that corner.
Do you have any additional points? Because we allocate 3 minutes per person.
Well, then my 3 minutes are done, young lady.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add into the record that I've had approximately 3 calls inquiring about this project after the mailers were sent to 500 feet around, but nothing in writing. They were just more curious of what was happening.
Can you speak to some of the road dieting that was mentioned? I understand the project on Dixie's stops at Albemarle, so it wouldn't be going all the way to Southern, but I'm not familiar with what is potentially in the works for Olive.
Good evening, Rick Green, Development Services Director. The project, the road diet that you're discussing, Madam Chair, there's going to be a public hearing that FDOT is going to be having.
So I can't be there.
So nothing is definitive at this point. As far as Olive Avenue, there is nothing that I'm aware of at this point. I will say that with any development, certainly we have to comply with the Palm Beach County Traffic Performance Standards Ordinance and make sure that traffic works for any project that comes in. So we will be reviewing anything. But again, there will be credited to the building that was there before. Any increase certainly will have to be addressed.
And currently, though, that Dixie Road dieting stops before Southern, correct?
It goes from Okeechobee to Albemarle. The proposed, again, nothing is official yet, part of the discussion that FDOT is having, but nothing beyond Albemarle, which is the 3111 Prospect Place project that's under
Which is north of
now.
Southern.
Which is north, yes.
Okay, thank you. Did the applicant want to provide a rebuttal? Oh, and I guess we'll go one by one, but I think that was the only, is there anyone else here to speak on this project? No? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a very quick response. I think one thing I would like to point out is that this is not adding a convenience store. This is relocating a convenience store. 7-Eleven will be moving from their current location to this location. And Mr. McCallis made mention about adding a convenience store where it really isn't. It is just going to be relocated. And to add to what Mr. Green said, I also did want to let you know that this project has received its traffic concurrency letter from Palm Beach County. So they have reviewed the traffic impacts on the surrounding roadways and have found that it complies with the Traffic Performance Standards Ordinance. Thank you.
And this might be a little bit outside the scope, but the current location of 7-Eleven, will that use continue? Can another convenience store open, or will it cease when that business relocates?
That property is owned by an entity that is not here, so I cannot speak on behalf of what that property owner can do. I don't know, Frederic, whether they would have to come in for their own Class B conditional use?
Yeah, depending on how it was originally approved, if they have already received a Class B, they could continue to operate theoretically, but I have not researched their approvals.
Okay.
Frederic, along the same lines, let's say another convenience store would want to come into that space. Would they be required, another way of putting it, would they not be allowed to have a convenience store because of the parking restrictions? Would they be?
You're talking about the other site?
No,
Or
well, yeah, the other
the
site,
subject,
right.
the other site, I really can't speak to it because
Yeah.
I have not done that research. It certainly is not in compliance, as
Right,
I
it
heard this
certainly
evening.
isn't, no.
So it would depend on what was previously approved.
Right, okay, thank you.
And one other question, just to clarify, the present location of the 7-Eleven is at, the property owner is not related to 7-Eleven, is that correct?
That is my understanding, but let me confirm. Brandon, are you leasing? You're leasing that property? Okay, yes. 7-Eleven is leasing that property from that property owner.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and one other question. It is a demolition, partial, not full demolition. So would you be moving forward if you weren't given the tax abatement status but received all the other approvals?
In speaking with the applicant, the tax abatement is not a make or break for this project. However, I believe Mr. Spina has explained that that is one vehicle that makes these projects financially feasible. And by incentivizing the historic preservation aspect of the project, that just becomes another way that the dollars for this development essentially stay in the black and not the red.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no further comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session.
I guess my question to you would be, are you happy with your tax abatement answer?
Well, I think that the tax abatement program is meant for projects that go above and beyond when it comes to preservation. And I'm very happy to see a new use for this building. But I personally, given the Secretary of Interior standards, can't support a tax exemption for a project that's demolishing a significant portion of the original structure.
Okay.
But I think that in even considering this project and the fact that staff has recommended it for approval, staff is cognizant of the fact that there are limitations with this property. And I think that the board would be very flexible to approve, show that it's being very flexible if it approved this project with the demolition.
I would agree that it's very difficult to reconcile a partial demolition with a tax abatement. And I did not hear anything that was presented suggesting that that western portion was an addition to. My understanding, and correct my facts if they're wrong, is that that is part of the original structure. So it's very difficult to try to reconcile that. It's hard to believe that the 7-Eleven going there will not make great profits, given the greater size and the number of patrons going there. So it may right now just not be the right fit, looking at the facts to the requirements of the tax abatement. But aside from that, it's a welcomed application because that building has been sitting there so long vacant.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with the tax abatement comments in terms of the overall project. There is something in the Secretary of the Interior standards that talks about how when a building is used over time, being able to make changes to it so it can continue to have a use or be used, period. And in the time that I've been in the city, I haven't seen this building successfully used. And so for that reason, that continued use of the space, I would agree with the demolition just for the application portion. The first part of the application, not the tax abatement.
I just wanted to mention that in the code, it references that the exemption would normally apply for a period of 10 years and that you have the authority to grant it for a shorter amount of time, if that were of any interest.
I did not know that.
Great counselor.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That might be something that would be worth looking into, something like 3 years or 5 years rather than a full 10 years. It's going to more than make up the taxes once it gets back on the tax roll with the change. Of course, the property appraiser is going to look at this, to see how much is really attributed to the improvements. So it's not a simple math problem, but perhaps just 3 years or 5 years may be a good compromise to reconcile the fact that part of a historic property is being torn down.
I think that that would help speak to and award the applicant for the portion of the building that they are keeping, making such minimal changes to it and retaining so many things like the fenestration, the detailing, the signs.
5 years is sticking in my head. I think 3 would be too short, but 5 years, because they are doing a lot of great things to keep the chandelier. I mean, it's an interior. I don't know if that's landmarked. I don't think so. It's not designated, and they're keeping the chandelier. That's fantastic. And the use of that rotunda, that's where everyone would go and get their coffee and read the paper waiting to be served by the tellers. So there are a lot of pluses with the use that they've contemplated.
I agree. I think it keeps the building's original relationship to the street by preserving those interior features. Any further discussion? Would someone like to make a motion? We have 2 separate motions.
For the first motion, do we read in the waivers? I see the verbiage.
Page 9 of 9.
Yes, so that includes the special use, but it doesn't specifically speak to the waivers?
I think the waivers are contained within,
Okay.
is that correct?
I believe they're contained within the application. Yes, Ms. Mittner?
Correct, but I think for clarity, if you could include and the additional 5 waivers. Then I
Okay.
think we can
Just a
cover
brief
both.
reference to them. Sure.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board grant application number 20-01, a request by Colleen Walter, Urban Design Kilday Studios, for a Class B special use permit to allow a convenience store with motor fuel sales at 301 Southern Boulevard in contiguous lots known as 310 and 318 Conniston Road. The motion is based on the testimony presented, along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the criteria in Article 2, Section 94-36, E3, and 4 and 5 has been met. We also approve the additional 5 waivers.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. You now need a motion for case number 20-02. And there are 3 conditions.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-02 for ad valorem tax exemption in accordance with standards 9 and 10 as set forth in section 94-49 of the city's zoning and land development regulations. The motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach, Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and additional criteria set forth in 94-49 of the city's zoning and land development regulations. The conditions include the following. 1, the glass shall remain clear on the rotunda and the glass walls immediately to the west and north of the rotunda. 2, the chandelier and the 2 monument signs/clocks shall be restored and incorporated as indicated on the plans. 3, all metal finishes on the site shall be mill finish slash galvanized in color.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any conversation?
For 5 years. Ad
So
valorem for
would you
5
want
years.
to amend your motion to
I'd like
add
to
another
amend my
condition?
motion to add a 4th condition, which is that the ad valorem tax exemption would apply for a period of 5 years.
Do we have a
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to case number 20-03, 947 39th Court.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Mark Narcis.
Could you speak a little bit louder, please?
Mark Narcis. I'm coming for additional, please.
Great. Do you have a presentation, or would you like staff to make the presentation?
Staff can do.
Okay, we'll let you know if we have any questions after staff makes the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank
Thank you.
Good evening, Aaron Barngraber, Historic Preservation Planner. Here we have an ad valorem pre-construction for new construction of an accessory structure and then additions to the primary structure at 947 39th Court. Here's the project location highlighted in red. The request tonight is a 1-story addition to the northwest corner of the primary Mission Revival 2-story residence, measuring approximately 416 square feet, a covered patio to the rear of the primary 2-story residence, measuring approximately 245 square feet, and new construction of a rear detached accessory structure in the northeast corner of the property, measuring approximately 397 square feet. And this is a contributing structure within the Northwood Hills Historic District. Here we have the south elevation on the left, as well as the north elevation, a bit obscured by vegetation, on the right. This is the property immediately adjacent to the west, and this is the property immediately adjacent to the east on the right. Here we have the proposed site plan. North is up. They're proposing addition here, as well as a new detached accessory structure in this corner of the property. North is to the left here. The new addition to the primary structure will feature a master bedroom, master bath, as well as utility room and hallway, as well as the covered patio. And the new detached accessory structure will feature a bedroom, bathroom, as well as a sitting area. This is the proposed roof plan for both of the proposed work. And north, again, is to the left. This is the front elevation. So the main existing structure right here, there's no alterations being proposed on the front elevation, and this is the new addition with 2 single hung windows as well as a parapet wall. This is the north elevation of the primary and accessory. So here we'll have the master bedroom with a paired single hung window, the parapet wall, the covered patio, a sliding glass door, and the 312 roof pitch for the utility room, as well as the detached accessory structure here. Here we have the west elevation, which features the master bedroom addition, as well as a single hung window and the covered patio. And here we have the accessory structure's west elevation, which will feature 2 doors, as well as a metal awning above each door and the parapet wall. And the east elevation of the accessory structure will feature 3 single hung windows. So staff has reviewed the criteria for new construction. It meets the Historic Preservation Ordinance, as well as the Secretary of Interior Standards 9 and 10. And this also applies for additions and alterations as they're proposing. On a site visit, staff noticed that the garage door had been previously filled in. This photo right here is from a code case, and this is from April 2019 of Google Street View. And then here we have the door from Google Street View in June 2017 that has been replaced with photo that was taken yesterday. So as this is an ad valorem, staff finds that there's an additional condition not found in the staff report that would be ideal to add to have greater compliance. So the 5 condition is recommending approval for the ad valorem with 1, the proposed addition and new construction shall feature a slightly textured stucco finish. The front street-facing window shall have clear glass. All remaining doors and windows shall have clear glass or clear glass with low E. The metal awnings shall have a metal S-tile roof in an earth tone color, and supports shall have a black color. The 312 roof addition shall have a metal S-tile roof in an earth tone color, and then the condition to address those 2 items I just mentioned. The applicant shall replace the upper story front door with a 15-light door with clear glass and recreate the garage door opening with an architecturally appropriate garage door. Thank you.
Questions of staff? Have you had an opportunity to review these conditions with the applicant?
On Friday, I sent an email to the applicant regarding the 4 conditions. I have not had an opportunity to speak regarding the 5th condition.
Okay. Sir, could you please come up? Have you had an opportunity to review the conditions outlined on the screen? So right behind you, there's some conditions there of your approval. Do you have any questions? Are you okay with those?
Yes.
Yes. So the 5th one is to replace that door on the 2nd floor on the front of the house.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any further questions of the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any members of the public here to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session. Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to approve? Or not approve? Whatever motion you would like to make.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-03 for ad valorem pre-construction, new construction, accessory structure, additions, primary structure, in accordance with standards 9 and 10 as set forth in section 94-49 of the city zoning and land development regulations. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, the Historic Preservation element of the Comprehensive Plan, the City of West Palm Beach, Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, specifically standards 9 and 10. Additional criteria set forth in 94-49 of the city's zoning and land development regulations. The conditions include the following. The proposed addition, new construction, shall feature a slightly textured stucco finish. 2, the front street-facing windows shall have clear glass. All remaining doors and windows shall have clear glass or clear glass with low E. 3, the metal awning shall have a metal S-tile roof, an earth tone, and the support shall have a black color. 4, the 3 and 12 roof addition shall have a metal S-tile roof and an earth tone color. 5, the applicant shall replace the upper story front door with a 15-light door with clear glass and recreate the garage door opening with an architecturally appropriate garage door.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good luck with your project. Moving on to case number 20-04, 315 Dyer Road.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Darrow. I'm the owner of 315 Dyer. We, back in September, had a fire in our guest house. We've been, since then, trying to get remediation done so that the structure could be maintained. So far, it's been about $80,000 of remediation, and it hasn't accomplished much. So we've had air quality testing done, as it's still difficult to walk into the building after it's been totally gutted on the inside. Today, I supplied, unfortunately, staff did not have while they had the air quality report, they didn't have a summary of what all of that meant. I provided that today to Aaron. He was going to make that available to all of you.
We've received it.
You received it, okay. So obviously, you can't fix the existing building. We'd like to raise that building and build a similar building to it. We understand that if the building is torn down, it's slightly larger than the current code allows, and we're fine with putting up 1,000 square feet versus the 1,200 plus square feet that it currently is. So we'd like permission, obviously, do that. We're going to obviously submit a new plan for what the new building would look like and how that fits on the lot and everything else. I have Rob with me, who's the general contractor on the property, and we're open for any questions that you might have.
Questions of the applicant? So it's not your intention to reconstruct the building?
It can't be reconstructed because
I've done.
You could step up to the microphone, please.
I represent Melly Construction, and I've done a lot of historic projects, and we've taken it as far as we possibly can with remediation. We've taken out everything that's possibly be taken out. We've repainted everything. We've sealed everything. And what remains is the stucco. Everything's been penetrated with the carcinogens, and there's nothing more to do except remove what's existing. It's a residential building that you can't reside in. I don't know what else to further do that I can do. Structurally, it'd be fine, but it's not a structural issue that we have. It's an issue with air quality and carcinogens. It's a cancer box. And, you know, anything short of just removing it and starting over, I can't see of any other possibility to go forward with it. They want to stay within all historic standards. They moved to a historic neighborhood for a reason. They like it. They want to stay in that same genre and everything, have everything approved and go through all the proper channels and approvals.
I understand this is a big issue, that you're trying to maintain these structures as best as humanly possible, as do we. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone through the lengths we've gone to try to keep it. One of the things that maybe it'll be helpful, I don't know, is that we get a conditional approval upon the approval of what's going to replace it, so that staff and you can then see how the integrity of the neighborhood, the integrity of these buildings would be as if it was maintained. So that maybe the demo permit is conditioned upon the renovation permit or the reconstruction permit.
Where and how did this fire occur?
Excellent question. We really don't know. It seems like there was an outside emergency light, one of those sensors that goes on and off when you walk by, and they think that water penetrated that somehow and created an electrical fire. And it went up from the first floor all the way to the second floor through the roof, burned out the flooring between the two stories. All of the windows were shattered by most of them by the fire department. So they had ozone machines in there. They had everything trying to get this damage under control, but we did it for months. This happened Labor Day, and up until, what month is this? This is almost February. That work went on until November. So, or maybe even into December. So we took all lengths we could to try to salvage that building. And what we would put up would be pretty much looking like what that building is. So we feel comfortable that we can provide a plan that staff could be supportive of and that the board could approve. And we'd work, with whoever needs to be worked with on the architectural side of it to make sure that it would be in compliance, not only with your regulations, but also the city, so that it meets all of that zoning requirements as well.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any further questions for the applicant?
Yeah,
Yes.
I've got a couple of questions. In your application, you say toxic air quality still exists.
Yes, sir.
So you're telling me that it's not just the smell?
Correct.
Okay, so has anyone suffered any kind of mental ailments, been hospitalized? Or
Nobody's been hospitalized.
No one's
no.
been hospitalized?
Nobody, no. However, but we don't go into the building. So we submitted today a report from Andrew Pruchetti, who's a PhD analyst for this from AirQuest Environmental, who basically says that the scientific community realizes that these compounds are all toxic materials that produce acute toxic effects, such as irritation and/or corrosion of the tissues in the respiratory system, and systematic and chronic effects such as liver damage, kidney damage, lung damage, cancer, and developmental toxicity. I have a 9-year-old that lives here. I have a 13-year-old dog, we live there. So
Okay.
we're concerned about the health hazard that we're living close to.
So if the wind blows a certain way, it smells, and you have difficulty breathing? Is
Yes,
that
sir.
what's happening?
Yes, sir.
One question I have is he, the professor didn't relate his comments, I believe, to his initial report listing, the parts per million or whatever of these various compounds. I had expected, looking at his report, whether those particular parts per million exceeded or were under whatever federal health or local regulations there are, and that's, that's not here.
Well, that's what he wrote today, which we provided, which I just quoted some of. And that these are, there wasn't time for him to do a complete report for tonight's meeting, but we can have one with the data that you just spoke of at our meeting when we would come back to get permission to build whatever it is that we wanted to build. I mean, right now we're suffering potentially significant health issues due to this. So whether or not there's so many parts per million, I mean, this is not my specialty. Yeah. I didn't even minor in this. Right. So I can only say that from this scientist who does this for a living, that when he's telling me this is a cancer risk and other health issues, I have to take that seriously.
During the time that you've been there residing, this is an accessory structure.
It's an accessory
correct?
structure,
Okay.
yes.
And you reside in the primary residence,
Correct,
right?
yes.
And so during the time that you've resided there since the fire, have there been times there where you've had to call the EMTs because you're having a difficult breathing or anything like that?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. So what has been the extreme event which has created the problem, other than the study, your own personal experience?
There hasn't been an extreme event yet.
Right.
These things don't just happen instantaneously.
Right.
It's over time. It's exposure over time that creates these potential, not saying it's going to happen, but these potential negative impacts of this could happen over time, and exposure to it over time. As you say, we don't live in that building. We can't even go into that building. So I'm sure if we lived in it, some of these possibilities would become much more severe. But fortunately, we don't live in the building. However, someone someday could live in that building, but you can't.
So Typically, what happens with a demolition request is that you have an additional set of plans that are being submitted, or conceptual plans. So we have a visual in concept to say, okay, this is being demolished right now. This is what we'd like to do instead, or we just want to demolish it and we want to increase the green space or something, so that we know, in fact, what is going to happen. And I have seen it very rarely done, where there's a demolition without a preservation board knowing how the property is going to be handled.
Well, that's why I had suggested, I don't know if it's possible or not, that's why I suggested to make the demo permit conditional upon what you just suggested. Therefore, we're not tearing it down until the full plan comes before the board.
But, and when, for instance, in the city of Delray Beach, just use another example, in city of Delray Beach, the demolition, you have an approved set of plans, and you've already gone through the process of getting those plans approved, so the property owner has already a financial investment to see it through project completion. So rather than just approve the demolition with a conceptual approval, there's a risk that you're not going to get the building built, and you're going to end up with nothing there. You understand?
With the remediation, he already has an $80,000 investment.
Right.
He lives, this is his property, his domicile he lives at. And let's say the structure's worth $700 per square foot. And he's trying to base his demolition permit based on a approved set of plans, like another application going in. I don't see that being an issue at all.
And by the way, obviously, this was a fire. It's an insurance claim as well. So the insurance company, I have plenty of coverage to rebuild this, to rebuild the structure. So there's not a financial issue as far as that goes. I just have some real concerns about the proximity for this. We don't want to move out of our house. We've lived there. This is going to take months to resolve. Even if it's approved and we do rip it down, it's going to take months to redo this thing. It's going to be somewhat of a construction site that we're going to be living in. So it's not something we're looking forward to. This is not something we wanted to happen. This is a kind of a real hardship that happened. And we're looking for the board to be a little sensitive to that and help us get through this and be able to put forth a plan. And if the notion is, look, come back in April or March because you can't meet the February deadline anymore, with a full set of plans, or at least enough so you can see what we're going to build, and then we would entertain the demolition permit and that application at the same time. That's okay, because we wouldn't demo the building until that plan was approved anyway. But
right. Well, that would be the idea. If we could get, for instance, if we approve demolition today with a representation by you that you would essentially reconstruct as-built plans.
Right.
I don't know if the plans are of record. That may be a solution.
This is my better half. This is Jody.
I was going to make a funny comment before about the mental illness thing, but I won't. Anyway, just want to make a couple of points. It maybe was a little premature to submit the demolition permit before we had the plans to show what we're going to rebuild. We are meeting with an architect. We have met with them a couple of times in discussions of what we want to do, and whatever information we've gotten so far from Aaron and Frederique, we've relayed to them and been discussing with them so that what they put on paper is going to be in compliance, with the requirements. We're eager to keep this as a structure, or to rebuild it as a structure that respects the integrity of the era. Even how we've decorated inside her house has done that, so we actually own this house twice. This is the second time. We love it that much. So, we want to keep it as much the way it is as possible, but rebuild it so that, it makes sense on the property and in the neighborhood and within all the requirements. So.
Nice.
Thank you.
So,
Do we have any further questions of the applicants? Thank you. Thank you.
Aaron Berger, Historic Preservation Planner. So this is the project location highlighted in red at 315 Dyer Road. The request is for a proposed demolition of a contributing accessory structure built in 1924, and they're citing an airborne smoke byproducts air sampling report. And this is a contributing structure, both structures actually on the property, within the El Cid Historic District. So this is just a photo of the main house, which is not a part of this proposal. And the next few slides are just going to be exterior and interior photos that were supplied with the application. They're in your packet. These are the interior photos. And so the remediation has been done by All Dry. I read the report, also contacted them. They're under the impression that their work is completed and that it's ready for an interior build out. They also are providing the Air Quest environmental report that was done. This is on the right, the air sampling for the ground floor, as well as, so I did a lot of research on this. It's not my specialty at all. So one of these things that stand out to me is that the concentration is in nanograms per liter. And that is actually a very small measurement. Here on the left, I converted it to milligrams per cubic meter, and then the limit by various government agencies. There is Mexico. The reason why I went with Mexico is that's just the lowest per the safety data sheet from this chemical provider that I got them from, and these are for exposure control / personal protection. Anyone with an NA, there just isn't anything listed for that. This is for the second floor. And once again, did the chart and the conversion for all this. None of these for either the first floor or the second floor comes even close to exceeding these limits that were provided in that safety data sheet. In the report, they said that this does contain 12 of the 15 target fire indicator compounds, and there's no standards, regulation, or exposure limits currently existing for airborne fire indicators for indoor environments. This is a copy of the email that was provided to you that I received this morning. And I just wanted to comment on it that the volatile organic compounds are everywhere. They're in this room right now even. So staff doesn't really believe that this is sufficient to create that argument that this is in fact a health hazard. So staff has reviewed the criteria for demolition, and staff finds approval for a request of a demolition of a contributing accessory structure with the information provided, including the new information, would represent an irreparable loss to the city of a historic resource. Additionally, staff is unable to determine that the demolition is appropriate in the interest of protecting public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. And we're recommending denial. However, as I mentioned in my staff report, more welcome to receive additional information, especially from a health expert that actually indicates that this is in fact a health hazard, for example. Thank you.
Questions of staff?
Does staff have any, my concern here is that none of us are MDs, none of us are air quality specialists. Does staff have any special understanding of what these numbers mean and potential impact on health beyond just material data safety sheets?
So I did some research. I also have a friend who is studying chemistry for his PhD, and talking with him, these numbers are incredibly small, and it's very well possible that additional remediation, including an interior build out, would address those concerns. He's not a construction expert though, so.
Yeah, I don't know, my concern is just that I don't think any of us have a good understanding here, or enough of an understanding to say whether or not this does actually pose a health risk. So I would err on the side of caution to ask somebody to maintain a structure that could potentially, that they're living there, in my opinion at least, pose a health risk.
The applicant said that the report was not fully complete, that they didn't have time to finish it, and I mean, at this time, based on also the information that Aaron's collected, I don't think I can support a demolition being approved without what we typically see, which is the proposed plans coming in at the same time and having a complete report and all the information we can possibly have. I mean, once we demolish the structure, it's gone forever, and I just don't think that we should take that lightly when we don't feel like we really do have the full picture or the complete report.
I agree. I think more evidence is needed. I think that there needs to be a much more thorough analysis about how this relates to any local or state standards as far as limits, and I think it needs to be provided by the company that did this test or an additional expert. And I also agree that we need to follow procedure, and we need to review the demolition with the plans for new construction at the same time as we do with any project.
Okay, I'd just like to say that while Aaron may have done some research, he's not a PhD in air quality testing.
And so we're asking for additional
and so
information.
that's why I had the person who did the report initially make additional comments, which was this email, as to what that all really means, because none of us really look at these numbers and really know what they mean. So we're not looking to rip down a building that doesn't need to be ripped down. Okay, we would rebuild it if it could be rebuilt in a safe way where what would happen is all of the building, all of the stucco on the exterior, all of the interior, which you see in these pictures, would need to be removed. So you really, while the building may look the same at the end, it's really, the renovation process of that would be to really demolish the building and rebuild it and make it look exactly like it looks. I think Aaron said we could do that. We could keep this building, keep the 1,200 square feet, and remodel it. Now, if that were possible, we would do that. With all due respect to Aaron, I'm more concerned about everything we're confronting and our loss. Okay, so when you say, well, we don't recommend tearing the building, and I understand we can come in with a set of plans so you can see what it looks like and what we're going to replace it with. We have no objection to that. But the arbitrary kinds of, well, these numbers don't mean much, you go into the building and smell it. You go live in that building and see what it smells like and see how close it is to our main house when my son can't play out in the yard because of it. So this isn't just, hey, look at these numbers on this page, what do they mean? This is a real life situation where you have real people living in this, and you're saying, yeah, go ahead, live in it. I looked it up on the internet. I looked at my friend who was...
We're asking for more information.
That's fine, and we're prepared to provide it, and we're prepared to give you plans as to what it's going to look like. My objection is not to any of that, and not to any of the process and any of that. My objection is for somebody to say, hey, you know what, this is fine for you to live in. That's my objection.
So I think we would just like some more information on this, and at this time, I feel like the application is incomplete for the information that we require. So I don't think that we're saying no.
I understand.
I'm just saying
I understand,
that we need more
and I appreciate the process, and it's not my first rodeo. I appreciate it, and I respect all of you, and the fact that you're up here doing this job is great, because the neighborhood does need to be protected, and it does need to be preserved. Now, we're all on the same page.
And if I can, may add, I don't think anyone is suggesting that you're around a toxic building at all. The building that is there right now, if there can be just a little bit more due diligence to report back to us.
Sure,
Because
and
if I may finish, Paula Ryan, who's a former city commissioner, she used to live on Queens Lane in Palm Beach, and the house was completely, a fire took to it, and they had to come, and they had a terrible fire. The primary residence, another longtime resident of West Palm Beach, Jim Vance, bought the house. He was a general contractor and restored it to the original condition. So unfortunately, I have facts of situations where there have been restorations of of homes, not accessory structures, where people have. Now, Paula, she gave up on the house, so I could understand your feelings. She probably will always feel the smell of it, or know the smell of it. But I agree with.
She lives right, she's my neighbor.
I think
She
that's
lives
why
across
he's
the street.
bringing her up.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
making that, there may be some other people that you may be able to speak to see, if this is an absolute throwaway where we have to go ahead and raise it. But we're just not there yet.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we'll put in a new, if there's not an application already pending, for the next available hearing, when we can come in with plans, and I will bring in this doctor to speak, and maybe he can answer your questions better than I, to address those concerns. So I thank you.
I have one last question. So in the images, could you run through the images provided? Is there one of where the fire was on the interior? I can see on the exterior where there's the plastic sheeting,
Right.
but
It
where
went
on
up-
the interior on these photos did the fire occur?
Is this the only set of?
I have several.
I'm trying to get an orientation, okay.
That's the first floor. It's back in that far corner. You can't really see very well, but that back corner.
southeast corner.
It's the southeast corner.
It's the corner you can't see in this.
So is it a correct statement that with the photographs we've provided, we don't have an image of where the fire occurred on the interior?
Right here, where it started.
It's been fired.
Okay,
You can see that it's burned out.
okay.
And you can, I don't know if you see the light looking through from the.
See, it burned out through the second floor. It's
Okay.
hard to see in this image, but that second floor flooring is gone. You see under that window
Okay.
there, it's like boarded over.
Yes.
It went up that wall, and you can't see from these pictures, but actually through the roof.
Can we get some addition, when you come back, can we have some
Sure.
additional photographs? I think that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
And so I think we'd like some additional information from your expert, some additional photographs, and then also plans for new construction. Would staff like to see anything else, or is that?
I
Do
believe
you
that-
have any recommendations for anything else?
I believe that will be sufficient.
Okay. So we'd like to continue the case.
Okay.
Do you want to continue it to next month, or do you need more time?
No, I think we could probably get what we need done by,
Can we address it in a week or so and see what the architects are?
I think we should continue it for a month, and if they need more time, they can let city staff
Okay.
know.
Okay.
that's good. Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for
So
all
do we
your
need a
time.
formal motion?
Yes, we need a motion to continue.
I move to continue case number 20, oh, is this the right one? I move to continue case number 20-04 to next month's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a nice night.
You too. Moving on to case number 20-05, 962 30th Street.
I can't see it. Fabulous. Thank you.
Then you just do enter or backspace.
Up and down here somewhere? Okay.
Enter and backspace. For forward.
Okay, all right, great. Works. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Bill Jacobson. I'm a lawyer here in West Palm Beach, and my address is 105 South Narcissus Avenue in West Palm. I represent an entity known as Partners in Community Building. As you can see, it's a limited liability company, a relatively new company, which owns several lots within the downtown core. The purpose of the I'm going to call it PICB, Partners in Community Building, is to build homes in the inner part of our city. In this particular case, in the northwest area. This house is going to be on 30th Street, and the idea will be to create affordable housing for residents of our city. This will be intended to be an owner-occupied house that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. It's a new structure, new construction.
Apparently, excuse me, at one time there was, I think I told you the address at 962 30th Street. It's at the corner of 30th Street in Windsor. Anyway, at one time there was a house on this property. The structure was built in 1925 and demolished in 2004. We had nothing to do with the property at that point. We know nothing about what the house was at that time. There have been several owners, and the city ultimately ended up with ownership of the property as a result of some tax deeds or water liens and everything that was foreclosed upon, and my client acquired this property from the city of West Palm Beach. The property is located in the Northwood Hills Historic District, and the lot, which is on the corner, as I said, is 60 feet wide along 30th Street and 102 feet deep from north to south on Windsor. If I get this wrong, please bear with me. There's our address, and let me show you our site plan. As you can see, we're actually east is up at the top of the property, 30th Street to your left, Windsor down to the south or to the bottom of the property. The front of the house is located along or faces 30th Street. We have some historical, you can't see too many of them, but or perhaps too well, but we've taken elevations and pictures of the other houses that are in the neighborhood, and clearly our intent is to build a house that is consistent with the other homes in the neighborhood. We've worked very closely with Frederic over the last several months in an effort to create a structure which is consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. Pardon me. It is proposed that the house that my client constructs is going to be approximately 1,448 square feet and a single-story, minimal traditional structure or design. The front of the property, here's a street view of it. This is not telling you very much, but there's a survey of the property, and you can see the location of how the house is going to lay out on the property. All right, here's the floor plan of the house. Once again, the front of the house is to your left, where the entrance is. Side of the house is along Windsor, the long length of the property. There is a side door on the Windsor side of the property, on the Windsor side of the house, and once again, the front door is along 30th Street. This will give you a much better idea, far better than I am describing it, as to what the house is going to look like. You're looking at it from 30th Street. It's on the south side of 30th. What we have here is our front door. We have two single hung windows in the front of the property, 1/1 single hung windows. We have a planter in the front, which is consistent with some of the other houses in the neighborhood. The planter goes all the way from the one corner of the house where the coins are to the corner of the house where the coins are on the east before entering the house. We have coins on the far east corner of the house to the left of the entrance door to the property. A bit of a different elevation on the property. You can see that this is the western elevation of the property. There's the side door that I referenced before. The windows are consistent with the windows that are all around the property, single hung windows. And the door leads out to a walkway that goes to the parking area, which is on the farthest south side of the property. There is existent right now a little driveway that runs up off of Windsor onto the back half of the property, and we intend to improve that and make use of that parking area. Okay. We have reviewed the conditions which the staff has given to us I guess it's safe to say the staff has recommended approval of the property subject to 4 conditions. We have reviewed those conditions with the staff, and we are in agreement with those, that there's a roof over the door on the side of the property. We have a side door that's going to match the front door. You may have noticed in the renderings that the front door was, or the side door did not have any windows in it, so we'll have a matching door on the side of the property that will match the front door. We have to have a walkway from the front door to 30th Street, which is obviously something that we would incorporate in any case, and that the windows will be white aluminum, single-hung, clear glass with a low E coating and no tint. That will bring this house very much into compliance with the other houses that are in the neighborhood. As far as size is concerned, the roof pitch on the roof, and they are predominantly all single-story in that area. So with that presentation in mind, I'd be glad to accept any questions and try to provide you with information as far as this project is concerned. Is there something I said to offend?
No.
I'm just kidding.
Just been going now for 2 hours.
Understand, and I've been here with you. Anyway, if there's anything that I can do to answer any questions related to this project, I'd be happy to do so.
Questions of the applicant?
I've either done a really bad job or a really good job, or it's getting late.
I think we don't have any questions, but thank you.
Great.
So excellent job.
So Frederic Mettner, presenting case 20-05. Since there were no questions for the applicant, I'll also be brief on this request for new construction of a single-family home. As Mr. Jacobson indicated, it is located on the southeast corner of Windsor Avenue and 30th Street. I'd like to point out that on the west side of Windsor Avenue, that these properties are no longer in the Northwood Hills Historic District. So it is both right at the southern boundary and the western boundary of the Northwood Hills Historic District. And the request is for that one-story minimal traditional style house of 1,448 square feet, which is very appropriate in size, scale, and mass to the existing structures. This is the subject property. There's a lot of road work going on in Windsor Avenue, so this is as close as we were able to get. But as you can see, the surrounding properties right across the street, hip roofs, 1/1 windows, a simple design across, even though these are not in the district, it is still its context on Windsor, also very simple, minimal traditional style houses. He already showed you the site plan. We did have that condition of having a walkway there and the floor plan with that planter. And again, the other request that this be a more decorative door, and that way the applicant works with us on designing a roof overhang, since that will probably be the primary entry for the residents, and also very visible from Windsor Avenue. The applicant supplied this streetscape, and this is the subject property. Some renderings. And our review criteria, we do believe it meets these, as well as Secretary Interior Standards number 9 and 10, so we are recommending approval as stated with the 4 conditions.
Questions of staff? And I didn't ask the applicant, but you've reviewed these conditions with the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any members of the public here to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-05 for new construction in accordance with the standard of rehabilitation and compatibility standards as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. The motion is based on testimony presented along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitutes competent, substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach, and it meets the Secretary of Interior Standards numbers 9 and 10. The conditions are as follows. The roof overhang shall be added to the door that faces Windsor. 2, the door facing Windsor shall match the decorative front door. 3, a walkway shall be provided to the front door along 30th Street. 4, windows shall be white aluminum, one-on-one single hungs with clear glass and low E coating, no tint.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to case number 20-06, 837 Avon Road.
For the next case, I'd like to apologize. It's my oversight that I didn't load the disc that was submitted in the original application. So while I look for it, if you would please let the applicant present with at least some of the images that I have in my presentation.
Good evening. My name is Pat Seagraves, the architect for the project. I'm here today with Daniel Clavijo, who will make the presentation, and the owners of the property, Roy and April Dunworth, that are here. We were not sworn in.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It's quite all right.
Could you please raise your right hand?
And if are you planning to speak at all, or if not, okay. Okay, could you please rise and be sworn in?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll let Daniel start from here.
Good evening, Daniel Clavijo with SK Architect and Planner. So we have here before you, and sorry that it's not exactly what we had shown on the disc, but all the drawings are here. I do also have a small printout of the presentation if anybody would like to see any images at a larger scale. But in essence, we're taking a existing 1938 house. It's a frame vernacular house, and we're going to put a lot of tender love and care to it because it has been dilapidated from previous owners. It is falling into extensive disrepair, and we're very excited that our client came to us with this project because they're looking to use this house for their own, their family. They're going to be personally living there, and it's going to add a lot of beauty to the community. They've also been very engaged with their neighbors, speaking to them and giving them updates of how he thinks about the process, and it's been met with very favorable reviews from the neighbors that he has spoken with. So we're very excited to share this project with you. I'd like to go first into here of the site plan, and I wish I could zoom it in a little bit more, but hopefully you can see what is going on. We are not changing the footprint in essence. There's only one change that we're doing, which is a very small, very menial, around 40 square foot addition that over on this side of the east property in the main structure, there is a jog to the house. If you notice from the roof plan, and I'm sure you'll see it in the elevations as well, it would appear that originally this structure was this L shape, one main structure going in this direction, the other one going over here. And then what they did is eventually they added on an addition. There are no existing plans or documentation that we have of to know when this this addition was made, but they've added a jog here, and this leaves the plan in a very unfeasible use for how we're planning to redistribute the rooms. So we think it's a de minimis addition to the existing structure. It is still in keeping with the existing structure, and it's going to be delineated to show what was existing before and what's new by a score line, which you'll see in the elevations. And it has a proposed, well, an existing guest house, which we are also proposing to renovate, and it has a trellis area which has also fallen into disrepair, which we are planning on removing. So this is going to breathe up the space. In addition, we're adding a pool, and we're also increasing or coming out to an equal amount of green space by removing this driveway, keeping it up to half of its existing location. It's also going to have a very lovely picket fence and some nice arbors to delineate the entrances. This is the floor plan. We had an existing floor plan in our presentation, and we got some pictures of the existing, so this is great. You can see here that it seems to be in fairly decent structure, but windows have been boarded up. The inside is rotten, particularly in the guest house, and our client, he is a contractor. He has experience in the building constructors as well as us as architects. It really is unfeasible. There has been termite damage, in addition, mold damage. It really needs a lot of care to bring it up to good standards. You can see here some additional photographs. We're going to be removing these added on AC units. We're going to be putting centralized air, so it's going to be a lot better usage. I'll come back to this in a second because I want to just finish going over the plan. We're going to have one bedroom here, a master bedroom towards the rear, open up the living room and kitchen area, bathroom. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aaron and Frederic. All right, let's go back to this and see if I can get this. I'm going to scroll, unfortunately, and let's see if it comes up to be how I wanted it. There we go. All right, so with the existing photographs, there we go. All right, so existing photographs of the neighborhood. We have a lot of, obviously this is the historic district of Flamingo Park. We have some of the neighbors which have undergone renovations, some not so much in keeping with the historic standards, but we're trying to do our best with the existing situation. You can see the deterioration of the existing structure, both of the exterior. This is that area which I was mentioning, how they added on to it. You can see a differentiation by the slope of the roof, still maintaining to the ridge line, but in a very dilapidated structure right now. The yard work has been overgrown and not maintained. So we're very happy that we're going to be making these changes. This is in a guest house, which it seems maybe at one point this was a storage area or garage structure. When you enter the house at first glance, there is a window here and the door is over towards your right. We're planning on changing that if you look at existing structures, and this is a typical kind of situation of a plan that has existed before, when we're planning instead to switch the location of the door to the front entry as a proper front door. This is more images of the guest house. These are images of the interior. You can see that, the framework is great, and it has this beautiful living room area, which is going to be maintained, all of this exposed timber structure. Our client really enjoys the wood framing construction, and it's all going to be maintained but it needs to be stripped down basically to the bones to bring this up to standards. This is that addition towards the rear where you can see also how it has fallen into disrepair. These are images of the guest house, also dilapidated structure. Here you can see on the location map where we lie in relation to our neighbors, a streetscape which you can show. We're still maintaining the one-story structure element. Site plan, which I went over with you guys. We're not really increasing that much, and even that addition is still maintaining below the maximum lot coverage areas and the floor area ratios required by West Palm Beach. I have here the existing floor plan and the proposed floor plan, so you can see that area that has been moved over. This guest house area has a nice little living space and bedroom area that has been reworked from the previous plan, just so you can see again existing and proposed. This is our proposed rendering about how the front of the house is going to look. We're still maintaining the color of the door that's existing. We're going to be scraping the chimney so that you can actually see the exposed brick. And the main change is the siding that before was board and batten. Now it's going to be siding. But in actuality, from further research, it has been discovered that there has been some horizontal siding underneath the board and batten. So it is maintaining into the existing structure, which we think is still historical in nature. In addition, we're adding shutters to the windows. We're still maintaining their double hung features, but we're going to be overall beautifying the house. And the photo that I mentioned about the siding is in the other presentation. We only received those photos recently after doing further investigation, and we will show you those again. An axonometric, so you can see from a perspective aerial view of how we're going to be updating and beautifying the property. And here you can see the existing south elevation compared with the proposed south elevation. As you can see, we're keeping the same style of windows. In many cases, we're keeping the windows in the same location. We are also indeed updating the roof to be a cedar shake roof, so we're going to be emphasizing again that wood material all throughout the house. The rear of the property on the north elevation, existing and the proposed, having a pair of French doors off towards the back. And then on the east elevation, this is the area in question where in the existing it jogs back. In the proposed, we're planning to make that all on one plane, but as you can see, it is differentiated. We are maintaining the score line, we are maintaining the line of the existing roof, and we are maintaining the pitch of that exists right now. So I think in those aspects, it is still being clearly defined what is existing and what is proposed. And then the guest house, which you can see the existing elevations, the proposed elevations on both the south and west side. We're planning on putting these French doors in lieu of the garage doors. There has been some discussion that we've had before with Frederican going towards the property about perhaps putting on top of this some carriage doors to mimic what is there existing, but behind it would be French doors to obviously add a much more beautiful entrance to that guest house area, as well as light, which is and means of egress necessary for the guest house. And then the north and east elevation, door and window schedule. And that photo that has that siding underneath as an existing feature is in the other presentation, but if there's any questions that I can address to the commission, I'd be more than happy, and Pat's here as well as, of course, the client and owner of the property who is very enjoyed to get this project started and add a beautiful addition to the neighborhood.
Questions of the applicant?
Could you just reiterate, you said that you found evidence that a previous horizontal siding was used in the home?
Let me see if I
And was that communicated to Aaron, and did he see it himself?
Yeah, we can go to the passage. That's a good idea. We actually have some pictures which we can pass out to you, but it is on the presentation that is here.
Thank you.
And so the plan is, of course, in all the areas underneath this board, thank you, Pat. In all these areas of the board and batten where the siding is, and the siding is in good condition, it will be maintained. In the areas where it has been rotted out, which we assume that there has to be some damage. Like I said, there has been termite control that is being mitigated to the property, but where there is areas that it can be maintained, we will be maintaining the originals. An area that it needs some renovation to it. We will be keeping it into that same existing style. It will be wood, it will have those same dimensions, and it is going to be, I think, a beautiful addition to bring this house back to the original standards.
Any further questions of the applicant?
This wooden window here, is that an original window?
Could you please repeat that?
Is that window that's pictured here an original window?
Yes, we have reason to believe that, all the windows that are here right now are original windows in the existing house, and we've proposed to maintain a lot of the original windows, if not in their same location, but obviously if it's rotted out, we have to provide a new window, but this is an original window that's there existing.
Okay, so other than the ones that you're going to relocate, you're going to restore them to an operating condition?
So long as they're in good operating condition, yes. If they have been rotted out and we need to, remediate that, it'll be the same proportion, same dimensions, and same quality of material.
From your investigation, was there any termite damage or water damage to them?
Yes, there has been, as I mentioned, right now there has been a tent placed on top of the property or parts of the property because of termite damage that was being mitigated in the meantime.
Specifically for the windows, and I mean, is there damage that couldn't be remediated by, filling or just replacement of sections of the wood?
It is a possibility, and for everything that can be maintained, it shall be maintained. It needs to go through, I think, a little bit more of the investigative process through the demolition of the interior, that we're going to be able to see a lot more evidence to this. Obviously, we've tried to maintain as much as the existing house as possible to not do any work onto it before getting approval, and any evidence that we find of this, we would obviously make known to the commission and to the building department before proceeding if there's any concern.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the applicant? Excellent presentation.
Thank you very much.
I think that it's a wonderful project. And thank you for making the investment.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the staff presentation.
Thank you. I'll be brief. As you already know, it's an interior lot on the north side of Avon Road in the both locally and nationally registered historic district of Flamingo Park. And initially, the request was for replacing the board and batten siding with new horizontal wood siding, but as we see now with the evidence, it exists there. Relocating the front door from the side entry to the front entry under the existing overhang and stoop, about a 31 square foot addition, general rehab, including new windows, doors, and site work. You've seen the site images, and as he indicated, this is where the front door would go versus on the west elevation under that same overhang. And then this is the recently supplied photograph where you can see that horizontal siding right under the board and batten, which also makes sense given the depth of the trim work. It was a very flat house, and once the board and batten was added. So you've seen the site plan. One thing staff really liked is the retention of the ribbon driveways and really still evoking that historic site work. The elevations that you've seen, of course the renderings. And in reviewing the application, we do believe it meets the Secretary of Interior standards and the compatibility criteria. We are recommending 3 conditions. The first one is that the window shall replace the area of the original front door. So in the floor plan, they're just proposing to put the front door where the window is and make it a blank wall where the door is. We believe it should be a window in that location. Originally, we recommended to the board when the packet went to press that the board and batten siding shall remain because we didn't have the evidence at that time. But now that we do, we are recommending the original wood siding underneath be retained and preserved, and any rotted pieces shall be documented and replaced with same width and profile. I believe you heard, and wood. I believe you heard that from the applicant. And then that the carriage-style shutters shall be added over the French doors of the accessory structure to retain an original garage use appearance of the building when closed. And this is what we always ask of applicants who are converting their accessory structures, so that from the street, at the street elevation that had garage doors, it still reads like a garage door in its original use. So we have shared those with the applicant. I believe they're in agreement, and so we are recommending approval.
Okay, so there's just two conditions now, correct?
Yes, I would like to tweak the second one, that the existing original wood siding be retained.
Okay, right.
That it's not new wood siding.
So
Unless
just
it needs
read
to be.
what's next to the asterisk.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Questions of staff? Okay, thank you. And you've had an opportunity to review the conditions and are in agreement?
Yes, we're amenable to following the recommendations by staff. We think it's going to add beauty to the house, so we're definitely willing to follow those requirements.
Great, thank you. Do we have any members of the public here to speak on this project? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session. As I said, I think it's a great project. Would someone like to make a motion?
Okay.
Can you go back to that other slide with the conditions, just so the person... There, thank you.
Oh, okay. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-06 for alterations and additions in accordance with standards as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. This motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach. And it also meets the Secretary of Interior's standards, specifically standards 9 and 10. The conditions include the following. The window shall, what am I looking at? Yeah. The window, excuse me. The window shall replace the area of the original front door. The carriage-style shutter shall be added over French doors of accessory structure to retain the original garage use appearance of building when closed. And the original wood siding underneath the existing board and batten shall be retained and preserved. Any rider pieces shall be documented and replaced with the same width and profile in cedar, cypress, or matching wood species.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations and good luck. Moving on to case number 20-07, 195 Dyer Road.
Good evening. We just got back into our house after 2 years, and we noticed a lot of our wood on the side of the house is rotted. We also had a broken window, so we were being in an evacuation zone. We wanted to look at something that's more hurricane resistant. So our first bet was go with vinyl. After we talked with Eric for a while, he mentioned hardy board, which we actually like the idea a lot better now. So we're willing to go with hardy board and get our hurricane resistant windows to come up to code and become more hurricane resistant. So that way, if we have to evac, when the next one comes, not if, we can come back to a house. And that's, I'll let Eric take it from here because I don't have a slideshow that looks good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eric.
Aaron Borgwaver, Historic Preservation Planner. It's fine. So this is for 195 Dyer. This is the property located right here. There is 9 requests. Everything is just kind of on this application. This is a contributing structure within the Elston Historic District, and as I did in the staff report, I'm going to group the request in with the review. So for request number 1 and 2, first is removing wood siding and replacing with matching color vinyl siding, white vinyl trim and white vinyl soffit, and then as well as replacing the existing wooden columns with aluminum columns, and that applies to the porch. This is the south elevation of the property, and this is the north elevation of the property. This is the west elevation. As you can see here, this has wood siding, and at some point, vinyl siding had been previously installed, and as you can see, the profile as well as the width is different. This is the east elevation, as both photos are actually east elevation. So staff has reviewed the criteria for request number 1 and 2, and they do not comply with the Historic Preservation Ordinance and Secretary of Interior standards as proposed. Staff has conditions to bring that into compliance. For request number 3, 8, and 9, so replacing the gutters, replace the rear deck wood door with impact aluminum door. This is the door right here, and replace the existing aluminum porch railing with a white aluminum porch railing. They did not provide a specific aluminum porch railing. However, this is the product catalog they included, and this is the door that will replace the existing door on the rear deck. So staff has reviewed the criteria for alterations, and this does comply with the Historic Preservation Ordinance as well as the Secretary of Interior Standard number 9 for request 3, 8, and 9. For request 4, 5, and 6, so that is replace and extend the existing wooden chain link fence with a white vinyl fence, replace broken tile porch with a vinyl deck in white, as well as cover the existing cement foundation with a vinyl lattice in white. These are photos of the fence, so these are in black and white. However, as you can see, the wood fence and the chain link is not in the greatest condition. This is the porch decking of the tile, and they're proposing to use a TimberTech product, which is a similar wood alternative product such as Trex, which has been approved in historic preservation projects before. This is the south elevation of the structure, and this shows the foundation as well as an example of the lattice work, which this isn't the exact lattice that will be used, but that's just an example. So staff has reviewed the criteria for 4, 5, and 6, and there will be conditions to bring this further into compliance with the Historic Preservation Ordinance as well as the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 and 10. And request number 7 is replacement of existing wood and aluminum windows with CGI impact aluminum single hung, fixed, and casement windows. Once again, the east and west elevation photos are showing some of the windows. And this is the site plan that was provided from NSI Windows. And on the right, we have the CGI Sentinel windows, which is the product they're proposing to use. Not in the staff report. There was 2 things I noticed after it was printed, is window R, which is this window right here, and this lovely fixed circle window. Actually has 2 different window types. One is a single hung, one is a fixed circle, and staff would consider this a unique window, and per the window and fenestration policy that was recently approved, staff is proposing a condition that this should be retained, repaired, and then clear impact glass installed over it. And these 2 windows, which are sash windows, the applicant is proposing casement windows. It is my understanding that this is a bedroom, and that's why they prefer that. The preferred option from a historic preservation standpoint would be for a single hung window to go in each opening. However, because it is a bedroom, we understand the desire to have egress. Staff has reviewed the criteria for request number 7, and it does comply with the Historic Preservation Ordinance as well as the Secretary of Interior Standard number 6. And there is actually 2 slides of these conditions. There's 11 total, but generally they are: the applicant shall remove all the unpermitted siding, the existing siding, and then installation of hardy plank lap siding, the hardy trim, and then the hardy soffit, as well as the siding and trim shall match the existing width and profile, and proof of the width and profile needs to be submitted with the permit. The existing porch column shall be replicated in wood. The gutters shall be half-round gutters in aluminum, copper, or steel, and the applicant shall install any lights on the interior of the fence and railing, and the light shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. The applicant shall replicate the existing aluminum porch railing, so the current design, or the new porch railing shall feature vertical square balusters. The applicant shall install the TimberTech product perpendicular to the house, as traditionally would have been. The applicant shall paint the foundation black and install a square lattice work. The window R shall be repaired and retained, and clear impact glass shall be installed over this window. All windows and doors shall have clear glass with a white exterior frame in aluminum, and then all the windows shall be sized to fit the opening and the location within that opening, and the aluminum mullions shall match the width of the existing opening. And lastly, all windows and doors shall have the external OG dimensional buttons. Thank you.
Questions of staff? Have you had an opportunity to review all of these conditions with the applicant?
I believe so, and they are, yep.
Okay, we're good. We're getting the thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. That's great. So you've had a good experience. Great. We love to hear that. Okay. Any further questions of staff or any questions of staff? Okay, thank you. Do you have any members of the public? Seeing none, we'll move into executive session. Would someone like to make a motion and read these conditions?
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-07 for alterations and additions in accordance with the standards set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. The motion is based on testimony presented along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or standard that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach. The proposal meets with all of the Secretary of Interior standards, standards 6, 9, and 10, except for the applicant's request numbers 1 and 2, which read as follows: removing wood siding and replacing with matching colored vinyl siding, white vinyl trim and white vinyl soffits, and secondly, replacing existing wood columns with aluminum columns. These are not in compliance. Conditions. The applicant shall remove all previously unpermitted siding and the existing siding prior to the installation of the hardy plank lap side siding smooth for siding. Hardy trim boards smooth for trim, and hardy board panels vented smooth or non-vented smooth for soffit. The siding and trim shall match the existing width and profile. The applicant shall submit proof of the width and profile with the permit. 2, the applicant shall replicate the existing porch columns in wood. 3, the applicant shall install half-round gutters in aluminum, copper, or steel. 4, the applicant shall install any lights on the interior of the fence and railing, and the light shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. 5, the applicant shall replicate the existing aluminum porch railing, or the new porch railing shall feature vertical square balusters. 6, the applicant shall install the TimberTech product for the front porch deck perpendicular to the house. 7, the applicant shall paint the foundation black and install a square latticework. 8, window R shall be repaired and retained. Clear impact glass shall be installed over this window. 9, all windows and doors shall have clear glass with white exterior frames in aluminum. 10, all windows shall be sized to fit the original window frame opening and location, inset depth within the original frame opening. The aluminum mullions shall match the width of the existing mullions. 11, all windows and doors shall have external OG dimensional muttons.
I'd like to suggest, if it is the board's intent, that the motion be amended to reflect that all standards are met if those conditions are included.
Okay, right. Amending the motion. That the approval is predicated upon bringing the project into full compliance with standards 6, 9, and 10 of the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to case number 20-08, 112 Roosevelt Place.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zdravko Mesaric, and I'm here to represent the owner of the property, Serena Weil, and the Sena Group.
Sir, could you speak a little closer to the microphone, please?
Pardon me?
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah, I will. As we can see on this slide, we can see the property that is combined of two lots. Lot 3 that is on east side and Lot 4 that is on west side. Altogether, those two lots, they combined, they give us lot dimension of 110 feet along the street and 140 feet deep. The original house, the main house, and the garage apartment, they are located on a Lot 4. And between the, on the east side of the building, there is a port cashier or a carport that is 5 feet away from the property line of Lot 4. We are here to ask for a variance for a setback for existing house that is located on a Lot 4 in order that we can split two lots into two buildable lots that each one would be 55 feet by 140 feet deep. That would create each lot approximately 7,700 square feet, which for Lot 3, we would have a required setback of 20 feet combined. Each side of new house would have a 10 feet setback on each side. In order to split those lots, we need a variance along the port cashier or a carport that is about 14 feet deep, from 5 feet to 10 feet, so that we have combined setback of 15 feet. This is a slide that would represent the split lot, and the original house would have a driveway that would lead to the carport. This is front elevation of a house. This house went through the years through a lot of modifications, and originally this carport didn't have that second story above the carport, and you can see that roof structure below. That is supposed to match the front elevation where we have those arched windows, and this addition was very poorly done, and it butchered the whole look of the original design. House was originally built in 1928. What we are proposing that we would take that second floor out above the carport, and we would bring the house to original condition, how it was intended to be, and when it was designed in 1928. Through all those modifications, one of the modifications was that a huge parking driveway area was created in the front of the house in a length about approximately 60 feet by 20 feet. And also that the covered parking area was added. So from street, we really don't have very nice appeal for the whole property. If we are able to split those lots, we would take out all those pavers and all that parking, and we would bring everything per code, per landscaping code. This is interior, side elevation, east elevation. Those pictures were taken probably 20 years ago. Right now, the second floor even doesn't have the windows. It has just a net screen. So as you can see here, they have those little, the carport has those little roof lines that was the end of that was the roof line of the carport, and that second floor originally didn't exist. This is current elevation. As you can see, those windows are now out. And that carport is enclosed. This is a picture of the windows above the carport, that they have a covered roof. And probably originally there were just 3 windows, and later on somebody just opened the door so that they can use the roof of a carport as the deck. All through the house, most of the ceilings, they have a Pecky cypress, and this is only area that doesn't have a Pecky cypress, which tells me, that was later on added as addition. Also on the property, I found parts of the original walls that they separated, Lot 3 and Lot 4, which tells me that originally when house was built only on a Lot 4, on a west lot. This is the remaining wall, and this is also a remaining wall, and we can see here on the corner that somebody just broke through the wall. Somebody probably later on acquired Lot 4, and they decided to put a pool on that lot. And for that reason, they had to break the wall between the 2 properties so that they can access the pool. So probably when the house originally was built only on a 1 lot. It was intended to be on a 1 lot. This is what I think that house originally looked like. I tried to recreate the elevations. This is a street elevation, and on the left side, there is a carport. That is how I think that originally looked without that roof extension that was poorly done. This is interior side elevation of the carport in the middle, and those 3 windows that I was talking about, that they're above the carport. I also went a little bit ahead, and I created the floor plans, preliminary floor plans for future property if we are allowed to split the lots. I would create a property that in a scale from the front is very small, and I would take advantages of the depth of the property of 140 feet and stretch the property in a depth, and that would relieve the front elevation, give me more open space. The house would have detached garage with a pool on the side, and those would be just the preliminary elevations. So you see the front would be very narrow, maybe front elevation of the house would be about 25 feet, 30 feet the most. And west elevation, side elevation would be 2-story, and then at the end, we would have in the back, we would have a 1-story structure. So we are hoping that you are going to grant us this variance, that we can proceed with the project. we would make a project that would be designed and in a spirit of the rest of the homes around, using all necessary materials, precasts to make a house to look like a houses in a neighborhood. So hopefully you will approve our variance request. Thank you for all your patience and all the work that you do for us.
Thank you.
I'm open for on the questions.
Do you have any questions of the applicant?
What is the plan for the second structure? I mean, your plan's to redo the house, right? The main house. So what's the plan for the secondary structure on the back, with the staircase? On the back of the property on lot 4?
On a lot 4, we would keep the house, existing house, how it is, but we would take that second story above the carport that was added, sometimes. And I mean, a house over the years was neglected and butchered, and the back structure is in a really, really bad condition and needs a lot of renovation and structural work. And we would put new doors and windows on the house, because right now we have this house has 4 different doors and windows. None of original. There is no one original windows on the whole house, okay? The house is mess inside, okay, and the back house is just falling apart. Even I'm afraid to walk on the stairs up on the second floor.
Thank you.
And so we're just approving the variance. We're not looking at any plans for new construction.
I just wanted, to give you kind of look into what I'm planning to do. That I'm not planning to do anything that would be out of the context, of existing neighborhood, and I'm trying, to create house that would be in a scale, nothing big and massive from the front. So that's the reason why I just showed you, like this is just idea what I would do. Yeah.
And you'll come back, I guess,
with
a restoration
I'm going
plan
to come back with the full set and everything and the renderings and whatever you need. I know the whole process. I've been coming here for 25 years.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Frederic Metner also going to present case 20-08, and I'll be quick on this cumulative side setback variance request at 112 Roosevelt Place. I think you've already seen the aerial. It is an interior lot on the south side of Roosevelt Place in the Prospect Park / Southland Park Historic District, and the request is to divide this lot in half. It meets all the minimum requirements for a lot subdivision. The minimum lot width for this historic district is 60 feet and 6,000 square feet. And they meet all the minimum requirements, but it's not even a new lot. It's because it's along existing lot lines, which we traditionally actually approve at a staff level. However, because the existing house is a contributing structure and doesn't meet today's cumulative setbacks. It meets the 5 and 5 on each side, but not the 20 total. It's in front of you for that variance. The applicant had actually indicated to me that they'd be willing to demolish the porte-cochere first and second floor to bring it into compliance, but because it's a part of the original element, we said no, we'd prefer you to seek a variance in front of the board. So it would be very similar to the 2 lots behind it in terms of splitting it down the middle. So again, the request is for a 10-foot side setback variance for the cumulative portion, but each minimum does meet it. Images that you've already seen. This is that second floor. We know that the second floor was an addition based on the Sanborn maps. They would keep this. They would meet all the parking requirements on each lot. And then this is the spacing between actually a very large new construction on the corner, and then the other side on the western side. So it is a tight street, and so contextually, staff does believe it's appropriate here. So just a little, zooming in a little closer, a lot of these are 5, and then there maybe 10. This one's very close. There's some that are tight. This one's a very tight one here. That also do not meet the cumulative 20 for other contributing structures in this block context. And again, it feels a little heavy on the street because of really the new construction, not the contributing structures, which are here. So, as stated in the staff report, we've gone through the variance standards. We believe because of it's an existing contributing structure, the original lot lines, we do believe it complies with all of that. I do want to point out that you have a letter at your seats from a neighbor who does object and has concerns about this. However, given the context, we do believe it is appropriate in this situation, so we are recommending approval. Happy to answer
Questions of staff?
Based upon the findings of the wall that once existed,
Well, anecdotally, I've actually heard that this property owner owned all the land, including the one where the new house is. So I think the intent was, so it was actually split off, but I think the intent was that each lot would have its own house, but that's not how it was before. There was no house there. So I can't speak to.
So it's never existed as 2 separate lots?
It has not.
It's always been joined, okay.
But the wall is where traditionally you would have split the lot, but that's not how it existed.
are the other houses in back on the narrow lots, are they all historic, no new construction?
The majority of them are contributing structures, yes.
And then as far as the comments of the home, I guess, being only 25 feet wide, I think any new construction that he would be bringing forward, can you comment on that?
I don't think you could condition that, but I believe when you have a new construction coming in, you could determine based on its context and rhythm of the street, since that is one of the Secretary of Interior standards at that point, but it could not necessarily be a condition of this evening's approval.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking how does that relate to surrounding structures? I know you don't have like measurements, but I mean, is that like a standard width or is that very narrow?
It's very narrow, but we could do the measurements, and so once it's subdivided, it would be at that, I believe it was 55 feet wide. It'd be at the 35 feet, so it certainly meets the 20 total cumulative and still has a proportionate width.
So would we be creating another, I guess, situation or condition where when this new construction comes forward, it would probably result in better architecture if there was some variance given from the setbacks?
No,
so that it isn't this narrow building?
No, I wouldn't recommend that. I think there's other ways to do I think 35 feet will be adequate for this new lot.
Okay.
And it's very hard to give variances for new construction because there really is no hardship. This is, again, an existing contributing structure where, again, the applicant was willing to remove that portion to come into compliance. It just conflicted with the historic preservation standards. So I wouldn't advise for a variance on the new construction.
I'm just wondering if we're creating a hardship or if we're creating some situation.
I don't think so, because he's demonstrated that he can make a floor plan work, and as long as it meets the 20, I think there's ways to get elements in there to make it appropriate new construction. That it wouldn't be overly narrow for the neighborhood or the street.
Okay.
Because this one here, and yes, I don't have the images right here, but there are some projecting bays that are narrow. Like this is a wide one and this is a wider one, but this has a projecting bay that's narrow, or this has an L shape, and this width from this portion probably isn't more than 30 feet either for this house down here.
It's about 10. That's
Okay.
my house.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I thought you were here.
Madam Chair, Are you also asking too that the new construction, even if it is replicating a historic structure in that area, would look unusual on a narrow lot, as he proposed? Let's say it's in a mission style, but in reality, you would never have that type of building that narrow on, with the street elevation. Is that what you were getting at too?
In some sense, I think sometimes when you do things, you don't always anticipate like what the impact is going to be. And since we're not looking at plans for new construction at the same time, it's kind of difficult to envision what might be built there. But I think that basically I just wanted to, ask staff's opinion of whether it is possible to build something that is complementary to the existing surrounding properties.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question, and maybe staff isn't the appropriate person to ask, but with the new lot, would they have to raise the property with the elevation, and then that would create a water issue with the outflow going to a historic property? So.
Well, you have to retain all your water on site, but it's certainly an issue in all our historic districts with new construction, meeting the new FEMA height regulations, plus the city's 2-foot freeboard requirement on top of that. So that is something we can certainly ask the applicant when they bring a streetscape in, so we can evaluate that appropriately. And maybe there's terraces or other mitigation measures so it visually is more consistent.
Right, because if they end up raising the ground elevation and you have all that water outflow, it could cause great problems. So.
Well, again, you're supposed to retain all your water on site, but
right, but
so yeah.
Hopefully, that's all.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, thank you. Do we have any members of the public here? Okay. So I know we had that one letter. So I guess we'll go into executive session. Thoughts?
Having lived on a lot that's 55 feet wide and it's platted that way, I think it's great that they're doing this. So.
I think this is something that we're seeing all over West Palm and in Palm Beach. In my experience over there is lots are changing the sizes. Some are becoming larger and some are becoming smaller, but I definitely think there's an increase in the number of people moving here, which is going to result in more density. And I don't think it's an excessive variance request. It definitely changes the character of the street to have one of these larger estates going to a smaller property, but I don't think that it's in violation of the Secretary of Interior standards. Do you have any thoughts as the neighbor?
I mean, it was just to give some history on it, behind it, I live in the house with the pool, right to the west side of the two, so behind Lot 4 where that house is. And the house to the east of mine was built forward from what was originally the guest house of my house. So these two lots were split, I believe, in the 80s. So, I mean, in that case, it's kind of an example, I guess, that you can fit two houses on the lots. It is tight. It's 10 feet on either side to the houses, but I mean, it is in keeping, I think, at least on the Greenwood side. On the 100 block, it's pretty in keeping with, what's there.
Okay. It's good to have context. From
Yeah, I mean, water is obviously a concern, so, but that's, not in the purview right now. But, I think so long as the new house is built with, neighbors' input and what have you, I think it fits the neighborhood, so.
Okay, great. Would someone like to make a motion? And I think the wording is in your packet.
This is the motion for granting the variance?
Yes.
Okay. Last time I did this, it wasn't too polished, so
Well, it's all spelled
gonna
out
give
right
it a
there.
shot since we're at the end of the evening. But it's all spelled out here. I move that the Historic Preservation Board grant application number 20-08, a request by Zratko Masaryk for a variance from section 94-82B2 of the zoning and land development regulations, which requires a primary structure to have a cumulative 10-foot side setback in the historic single-family high-density SF 14-C3 residential zoning district at 112 Roosevelt Place. The applicant is required a 5-foot side and 5-foot side setback totaling 10 feet, thus granting a 10-foot cumulative side setback variance. The motion is based upon the testimony presented, along with the application submitted, and that the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. The Historic Preservation Board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the 10 criteria in Article 2, Section 94-38D6 have been met for the variance. And I think we've got restrictions. Let's see here. Oh, I think that's it.
Nope, that was it, and you
Yep,
read it
that's it.
perfectly, but staff made an error. I apologize. That first 10-foot should have been, requires a primary structure to have a cumulative 20, and they were asking for the 10.
Okay,
Sorry,
I amend
that
my
was
motion as stated.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. You're welcome. Well, happy birthday.
Get there before the restaurant closes.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.